Okay, so I have been testing PTR pretty much every single day since the last update of a tier list. We have received several patch notes since I last updated my tier list. That's why today we're going to dive into it. We are actually going to go rank, I believe, the final time of the tier list before Season 3. I don't think we're getting any more changes. From this point, I really think that we're actually getting to that point where this is what the season is going to look like. Now, spoiler alert, it's actually looking really good. I'm very excited about this season because things are kind of balanced. When we first made this tier list, it was unbelievably unbalanced, okay? This was a problem. I'm going to show you what the very first tier list looked like. This was the original inception of the tier list. We have a problem. Some of these specs were doing 40% more damage than everyone else. This PTR cycle in particular, early on, was really, really tough because we had specs like Boomy before it was nerfed, doing the most insane single target burst that I have ever seen out of World of Warcraft. I mean, it was wild, and they were doing degenerate things like going bear form just to get more boss damage. Okay. Since then, most bug fixes have been resolved. We have gotten several tuning passes. This is not what it looks like anymore. The game is doing a lot better. This was the original list. But I wanted to start with, if you're a tier list watcher and you're an enjoyer of this content, congratulations, you might be addicted to World of Warcraft. I hate to be the bearer of good news. But I also want you to know, if this is one of your first seasons especially, always take early tier lists with a grain of salt. This PTR cycle, we had specs that were way up here. They're no longer there. We had specs that were way down here. They've been giga buffed. Blizzard actually has done a relatively good job balancing the game. So early on in the cycle, when we have things that are majorly bugged, they're not final yet. The tier lists are very fun content. It's fun to watch them. It's fun to hear people talk about the game. But you really have to be careful about automatically deciding your spec way too early. Until the season actually gets closer to release, there will always be changes, especially now in modern World of Warcraft history. They don't tend to leave something completely overpowered, okay? There are a few exceptions to this, but most of the time, things are actually doing pretty good. So I just want to clarify before we actually make, because I'm going to make an entirely new list. All right, and this video does not have to be a crazy long video because these are basically the final thoughts, but we already have gotten a lot of thoughts out there. I just want to clarify, don't start and commit to a spec based on the first tier list you see in a season start. Things will change. They always change. This is an early understanding. So now we're going to go back over here. I'm going to do this by role. There will be timestamps in the video. If you want to skip ahead to your spec, just go to the timestamps and you will find it. All right? When I post this to YouTube, everything will be sorted out because this might get a little bit nuanced. But we're going to start with tanks, and then we're going to go to healers, and then we're going to go to DPS. Okay? And if you're watching this live, suck it. You guys are going to be here for a while. All right, listen. Okay. When we're starting with tanks, right before we actually jump into tanks, I want to clarify one thing. Okay? I have to rank this based on what I think the meta perception is going to be. The meta perception is not always the reality of what your key looks like. When people rank tier lists, we understand that there are some specs that function better at a plus 23 world first Priory of the Sacred Flame coming in Season 3. And there are other specs which function better at a plus 12 Arakara. They're not always equal in this way. And so when I rank this, I'm going to clarify. I'm going to go over it. I need you to understand that when we talk about some specs, there are some specs that you should absolutely invite to your weekly plus 10 and plus 12, but maybe not to your weekly plus 20. That's fair. That's fair. The game can't be balanced to the extent where every single thing is playable to the highest degree. World of Warcraft has way too many specs. It's hard to balance. We give them the benefit of the doubt. They've done a pretty good job. But there are some specs that function better. Let me give you the criteria for these specs because I need you to understand, okay, right before we jump into the actual rankings. Number one, Specs that have consistent damage do better in lower keys. What you may not know, especially if you're newer to M+, is that the higher keys are planned out to the exact pull. They know exactly what's going to happen. So what happens at a higher key level is that the person knows, I'm going to send my 2-minute cooldown on this pack, this pack, this pack, that pack, and that boss. Do you do that in your +10? Nuh-uh, because you don't know what your tank is pulling. Your tank is going to be like, oh, I'm going over here. Whoops, nope, sidetrack. Ah, gotcha. I'm over here now. And they're going to do over here. And then somebody's going to pull that pack. So actually, you've been holding your cooldowns, and now you got to sit there for another 30 seconds. You're like, that cast went off. That guy died. Great. Now we're going to be here for another 40 seconds. So you don't know what the pulls are going to be. There are some specs that have consistent damage. They don't need to hold their pugs. They don't need to hold their... You guys got me. They don't need to hold their DPS cooldowns. And those specs tend to do much better at a lower key level because you don't know what the pulls are going to be, and you can respond to unexpected butt pulls, which happens all the time. Remember, we have Priory in the dungeon pool. We got Floodgate. We got a bunch of packs and dungeons where there's a bunch of packs really close to each other, right? We got Murlocs running around pulling stuff in Gambit. You're going to have to react to unexpected pulls. So that is a criteria, right? That's a criteria for DPS specializations that are going to do much better at a lower key level. Like, that's a massive, massive thing because there are some specs that we might rank very highly, but they need to kind of know when to use their cooldowns. And if they don't use their cooldowns, they're going to do no damage. This is something really, really, really interesting that I think that people don't really think about because a lot of people who make tier lists are so used to things just going according to plan because they play with very good players. But in a pug, the number one thing you can count on is that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. It's so much better to start with the assumption that things are going to go poorly. So there are some specs that work better for that. Does that make sense? I'm going to try to do my best to clarify because there are some specs that go lower but actually do much better at that level. Okay? Let's begin the rankings. We're starting with tanks. The very first tank that we're going to rank is, in my opinion, still the lowest tiered. Now, this is interesting because all tanks have been buffed quite a lot. There have only been very minor nerfs. Blood DK sits in B tier. There is not a single spec of tank that is lower than B. Every single tank is actually in a pretty decent spot right now. This is the Blood DK. Blood DK belongs in B because it does still have the fundamental issues of being a Blood DK, okay? This is the Blood DK. It can't actually be the best spec in Mythic Plus. It still has all the fundamental problems, but there is a caveat to this. In a +20, this spec is pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. You won't see this in the metacoms. You're not going to see it. I'm going to be honest with you. Listen, it's not going to happen. Look, you see this right here? It's not going to happen. This goes all the way down here. However, in a +12, this spec, if played well, is immortal. You cannot die in pretty much any context. If you are a good Blood DK player, this is one of the best tanks for lower keys. If you just want to complete your weekly key, it doesn't matter whether your tank has a group buff or not, because your DPS are going to die anyways. So if you buff your DPS with your tank group buff, who the hell cares? They're all going to die. So anyways, what happens with Blood DK is that actually, I really think it's actually A+. For a weekly +12, this tank actually is so good. A good Blood DK is immortal and actually able to carry your team for your weekly keys. That's the caveat of Blood DK. It is one of the most self-sufficient tanks. The gathering is a problem at higher key levels, but you'll be overgeared for a +10 or a +12. Even early on, Blood DK will just be one of the most self-sufficient immortal tanks. And that's a big criteria for just being tanky tank. You will never need your healers external. Your healer will never have to look at you. They won't even have to think about you. If you're a good Blood DK, then you are excellent because you just exist and you go, I don't need my team to do anything. If they get kicks, great. If they don't, all good. I can do grips. If they stand out in Priory, no problem. I can do grips. Second boss mechanic Priory, no problem. I got AMS. You're so self-sufficient that in a lower key level, when this tank has no problem living, you're excellent. So that's the caveat for Blood DK. I really want people to understand, yes, this has to be the lowest rated tank, but it's actually so good for a boss content. Like, I just think that a good Blood DK can really carry your team, right? And as always, of course, a bad Blood DK eats dirt. All right, next tank. That's going to go right here. Basically, the tanks are actually all in a pretty good spot. But I'm not going to lie. There is another tank. This one is obviously near and dear to my heart, but Guardian Druid goes just above Blood DK. These are both solid choices. They're not even comp dependent. They're just solid. Both of these tanks have received the damage buffs that at least bring them into contention. Guardian Druid is solid. It recently got the 12% buff, although the Lunation effect was nerfed for EC. But there is talk, and I hear whispers. Obviously, I'm very connected to the Guardian Druid world. You might play Druid of the Claw. Druid of the Claw is kind of competitive now, which is interesting. I don't know, ultimately, whether you're going to play EC or Druid of the Claw, but Guardian's solid. We don't need to talk about the pitfalls of Guardian exactly. There's a reason it can't be up here, even though it has Mark of the Wild, which is a very valuable group buff. Obviously, other Druid specs really affect the ranking of Guardian, but the truth is that Guardian is just a solid tank. B tier is very solid. I couldn't rank it in A. There's a part of me that wants to because it's very tanky. It's basically just as tanky as Blood DK, slightly less self-sufficient. This tank is so tanky, right? In context, by tank alone, it's up here. There are, however, a few times that I've noticed, right? If anything, actually, I'm going to put it in an A. This is not me glazing. I'm going to put it in A. It should be bottom of A. It should be bottom of A because I can't put it in the same tier as Blood DK, right? They do give or take similar damage. This has a group buff. If, in context, this tank is actually solid right now. Yeah, I'm not going to put high B. It would either be the highest of B or be low A. Low A is actually where we go. Okay. Guardian Druid is very hard to mess up. The caveat to Guardian Druid is that it is the best tank to learn how to tank on because it's very hard to mess up. All tanks, if you've never played a tank before and you're learning how to play tank, the main problem is that when tanks gather, they don't understand that their mitigation comes from the front of their body and the back of their body is very weak and vulnerable, right? Not everybody has a thick rotund like a Guardian Druid and cannot take back shots effectively, but Guardian Druid can. So Guardian Druid has the nuance of if you're playing in a weekly 10 or a 12, they probably won't die. Now, granted, I have seen things that make me cry at night. So occasionally in my weekly keys on my alts, I have seen some horrors. There are Guardian Druids who will literally just die, okay? But it's pretty hard to die on a Guardian Druid. Like, you'd have to almost be trying to drop your mitigation and stuff. Like, it's pretty straightforward. I think that Guardian Druid is simple. It's a very good tank to learn how to tank on. It's really straightforward and ultimately has Poison Cleanse for Arakara, has options for everything. But there are fundamental issues with it, which is as the key levels get higher, you have to alter your pulls in Dawnbreaker. The end of Arakara, you might have to alter a little bit. There are other tanks that can handle it so much easier than Guardian can, especially in Dawnbreaker in particular. I did a 15 Dawnbreaker on PTR today. I was healing it, and we had a VDH who took maximum 8 stacks. Guardian is going to be taking 80 of the stacks because you can't parry, so that sucks. But Halls of Atonement bleeds were removed, which means Guardian is solid. Okay, these are the two tanks. Here's where it gets real interesting. All right, here's where it gets super interesting. Prop Pally goes next. I can't rank it in S. I'd be trolling if I put it in S, right? This is a good tank, though, right now. Damage-wise, not great. Offensive capabilities, not really there. Defensively, however, we've tested all the dungeons now. We know what the dungeons are. When we first made tier lists, we hadn't even tested things like Halls of Atonement. There are a lot of moments where Prop Pally shines. Basically, in the keys that you're doing, you will never think, I wish I was a Guardian Druid. You'll never think, I wish I was a Blood DK. You will often think, I wish I was a Paladin. Because the kicks in particular, Halls of Atonement, you can carry Halls of Atonement. Like, Prop Pally can carry Halls of Atonement. It's not squishy. The problem actually is the fact that its single target is quite weak, and its offensive overall damage is actually not the strongest. That's normally not its niche, but defensively it's quite strong right now. Is a little bit more healer reliant than these two. These two, your healer doesn't even need to touch you. This one, you need a little bit of help. A well-timed external can really save a Prop Pally, but Prop Pally is in a very decent spot. They have been so nerfed. Their tier set started. It's like a fraction of its former self, but ultimately they're in a good spot. The dungeon pool treats Prop Pally really well. We don't have to go over it too long. I've talked about tanks a lot before, so you can go back to my old videos if you want and listen to me really rant about this. This one's fine. I don't think it's S+, though. Okay. That means there are 3 tanks left. This one's super interesting, all right? This one is super interesting, all right? Brewmaster, in my opinion, This is a caveat. I got to explain this. After testing it a bunch myself and also healing other Brewmasters in some relatively high PTR keys, I don't think it belongs in S+. I think it belongs in A+. There are two main reasons for this. It is currently the highest damage. Like, yes, by numbers alone, this is the highest damage, man. This is the highest damage, okay? Yeah, I'll flex real quick. There you go. There you go. I will honor the redeem. I honor all the redeems. All right, back to the video. I watch you. I'm seeing you right. No, don't distract me. I have ADHD. Listen. Okay, Brewmaster. The highest damage tank has its very good niche, but ultimately, every time I've played with one, CCs are lacking. I notice very quickly that kicks are going off that shouldn't be going off. I notice very quickly that I need to watch them more than other tanks. And the main problem with Brewmaster is that if this thing is meta, if this is considered by other people to be S+, I pray for pugs. This is not an easy tank to play. It's very nuanced, it's very difficult, and it also has a very unfortunate interaction where to greed your overall damage, you must spend your defensive resources to do more damage. No. This is always a problem with tanking. If you ever have a tank that has to choose between offense and defense, then in lower keys, when they don't understand that decision, they just want bigger numbers, you're going to have a brew walk in and just greed their stomp damage by going purify, boom, 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 reset, and then 10 seconds later, they're dead. Because they used their big defensives to gather, didn't have a plan, your healer's not expecting it, they did a big pull, they were like, oh, look, I popped off, and then 10 seconds later, dead, it's just, they're eating dirt. So my problem with this is that this is going to be a terror in lower keys. Also, even if you don't greed your damage, just a hard tank to play. It can be super squishy. To clarify, I was doing PTR earlier today, I was healing a 17 Floodgate, my brew just could not live. He was doing big damage, but he just died. Like, on repeat, I was just like, bro, I can't. Like, I'm doing my best, man. He would die through my external because he wasn't playing very well. And then right after that, I did an 18 Eco Dome, and my Brewmaster was, like, on point. Super tanky, slightly less damage, but he was gaming, okay? So Brew has some fundamental issues, the lack of CC, the harder time gathering with threat, the issues with just a few of the problems with Brew. I think that realistically at the highest level, this is going to be considered an S+ tank, and there will be a comp dependent on it. It does a lot right now, okay? But ultimately speaking, I don't think I could put it in S. It was there, but actually the more I've played it, the more I realize it just has some problems. It's just tuned really good right now. So this could be S+, but the only other problem with it is obviously if you play Brew, you're also limiting yourself to the comps that want to play with Brew. Right? Because you could be playing a different tank, and I think that it's important to consider all these caveats. There's a world where I couldn't put it lower than this. Like, I could not put it in the same tier as Guardian because it is, number-wise, it'll smoke Guardian. Like, if I play Brew and Guardian, I'm better at Guardian, and I will smoke my Druid's damage. And I also provide a buff that my team might want, right? I don't feel as safe because I'm not a very good Brewmaster comparatively to Guardian. Guardian feels immortal. This does not. But this does so much damage. Like, it's not a comparison, really. The single target in particular. Anyways, that's Brew. I can't rate it higher. Does have Poison Dispel, does have Tiger's Lust for a few mechanics that you might want, does technically have potential to help your team, but ultimately, I think that you would have an issue a lot of times with Brewmaster, especially in a plus 12, plus 15. I, in fact, encourage you, and Brewmasters, don't come after me, okay? But as I'm making this list, if you want to understand and you actually watch this video, I think you should not invite a Brewmaster to your plus 12. Like, if I was gearing an alt, let's say week 3 of the season, I'm now focusing on my alt. I'm playing my Resto Shaman or something. I'm just bringing up an alt, and I'm going into 10s. My main will already be way past that. But let's say I'm gearing up an alt, and I had a Brewmaster apply and a Blood DK applied. I would take Blood DK to that key. Like, it's not a push key. I would take Blood DK. Every time. I would take Blood DK. Or I would take Bear. Like, I just don't trust Brewmasters that are not at the bleeding edge of their spec. So, really think that's important. You kind of have the same thing with VDH. And before you come at me, we have VDH. This season, VDH was an absolute terror in Pugs. Because VDH is really immortal. Like, I started bringing mine up, and I was like, wow, this spec can't die. But then you have VDHs who are fully geared, 20 more item levels than I have, who will just walk into a 12 and die. They're going to Infernal Strike without anything up and just die before they even get to the pool. So that's the problem with Brew, is you're going to have things like that. Technically, you can save him as a healer because they should never get one-tapped, but I think Brew is going to be one of those tanks where if this thing is meta, it's going to troll a lot of keys. Okay, next we got 2 tanks left. That being said, the exact opposite of Brew is Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior at the highest level, I don't think... Okay, I got to put it here. Realistically, Prot Warrior at the highest level might not be as good as Brew. Prot Warrior might actually struggle to live at the very, very highest level of keys. I think that if you're considering from a title plus 20 range, I think that Prot Warrior, the nerfs to Colossus were interesting. The buffs to Mountain Thane were also interesting. This tank has been on a bit of a journey, but it has a lot of advantages. I would rate this above Brew. But the truth is that there is a tank, which I will talk about after this, that belongs in its own category. Prot Warrior is cool. It's straightforward. Mountain Thane got buffed by, remember, a bunch, and then it got buffed by 725%. Hilarious. Prot Warrior is in a very, very solid spot right now. It has a few fundamental problems. They can be worked around. There's no problem. Especially if you play with a Resto Druid, the first boss of Priory is a joke. You're fine. You won't get one-tapped. The Hall's bleeds were removed, so you don't have to worry about the dogs and Halls anymore. Dawnbreaker, still a bit of an issue, but can be worked around. There are ways to work around the things that Prot Warrior is not so good at. The main thing to understand about Prot Warrior is that it fits with more comps. Remember that tanks kind of exist as a support role to DPS. When we talk about tanking, the meta comp is going to form around the DPS that are very good. So let's say, for example, that you have melee or physical DPS that are overperforming. Brewmaster looks real good. Let's say that you have both warrior DPS are looking really good. Prot Warrior looks really bad. But when in the history of Mythic Plus has that ever happened? Haha, rest in peace, DPS Warrior, get owned. So DPS Warrior are here, okay? So here we go. Prot Warrior is sturdy, tanky, but has some potential problems. The main issue is that in lower keys, you won't die. You cannot die as a Prot Warrior in lower keys if you just press your buttons basically correct, but you will die if you take back shots. You can't get hit in the back as a Prot Warrior. I actually think that Prot Warrior will literally just go blah. It'll just go, you'll fall over. Do me a favor. There are some builds that we're going around not playing Battle-Scarred Veteran. If you're here at this point of the video, just play your Cheat Death. It's the most OP Cheat Death in the game, give or take, for keys. You can argue against it, but it's a 3-minute cooldown and an 8-second immortality. Just play Battle-Scarred Veteran. It'll save you in case you ever turn around at the wrong time. So there are some things that Prot Warrior struggles with. Let me tell you the biggest thing it has going for it. Rather than its individual damage and its individual sturdiness, the fact is it can play with any sort of strength or agility class, whereas Brewmaster is limited to physical specs, which we'll go over later. Prot Warrior can play with Frost DK, Enhancement Shaman, Havoc, this. It could play with a Windwalker. It could play with any Rogue. It could play with any Hunter, because it buffs all of them equally, even if most of their damage is magic. And I think that's a big up for Prot Warrior. A lot of the DPS that look very strong right now are not necessarily physically based. So Prot Warrior, when I was making comps, and by the way, after this tier list, very possibly, we're going to go into actually making some comps with understanding what's going on here, okay? I think Prot Warrior fits into more comps than any other tank right now. I think you're actually going to want a Prot Warrior. But remember, there were other nerfs that came in today. And that actually disproportionately kind of nerfs Brewmaster, interestingly enough. Like Beastmaster Hunter is no longer S tier, spoiler alert. So Brewmaster kind of takes a fall from that. Great. You know what tank is left. I know what tank is left. Do I even need to talk about it? Man, why? Why? How did this happen? How did this happen? Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. This spec not only has not been nerfed, but it's been buffed. Maybe they touch it again soon. There's nothing I need to say about it. You guys already know. Everything this spec does, it does still, but better. Okay? It's just... Okay, the one The one actual nerf to this spec is the fact that Boomy is not very good right now. That is an interaction with this that still matters. The other nerf to this spec is the fact that I think Havoc is very good right now. So comp-wise, you're a little bit limited playing this. But actually, it's so good. It has everything you want. It's so tanky. It's so much damage. It does good damage. It's got good prio damage. And it still has all the things that VDH has. But more importantly, after actually testing all these dungeons, it's a parry tank. And these dungeons are really so important on parries. I was healing a Dawnbreaker earlier. I love Guardian Druid. My Guardian Druid died in a pull on a 15 Dawnbreaker early on in testing because I could not parry the necrotic stacks and we lost the DPS. So I got to 80 stacks. I couldn't figure out a way to reset at that point. I messed up my Vortex Typhoon combo and I died. I healed a VDH in that pull today and they got 8 stacks total because they just reset their stacks consistently. And I was just like, okay, great. So this tank is amazing. It's got everything. I honestly, look, I don't even need to say this today. The nerfs to this tank were nothing. 17% mastery value nerf is effectively a it doesn't matter. And the only other nerf it received today was a 2% parry nerf. 2% is not nothing. It basically takes 2% more damage now. However, okay, it's only 2%. 5% actually would have started to affect it, but this tank is still immortal. Any tank player who's good at VDH can play this tank. It's got a few pitfalls, but otherwise deals with all the stuff really, really good. During Spikes is 100% uptime. You have 100% uptime right now. If you don't have 100% uptime on Spikes, you're playing it wrong. You basically have 100% on Spikes right now. Ever since they changed Feed the Demon to 1 point and you take it, it's easy. I even heard a VDH tell me today that he feels so confident on this tank that he will drop Cheat Death in favor of Binding because he doesn't even need Cheat Death this season. Something they might even do, okay? So, man, it's so impactful. I have a feeling they might nerf it. And I will put this on the record as I finish up the tanking here. I will put this on the record. If they do not nerf this spec and it stays meta for at least half the season, it's because they are going to release a new Demon Hunter spec, and that all that stuff we've heard about is true, and they're coming out with a new Demon Hunter spec, and the only reason that this thing is still an S+ cheesecake tier over every other tank is because they already want you to have one geared. Like, it's such a clear thing. They already want you to have one geared, and that's the only reason that they would leave this in its complete busted state. I will say, the last thing I'll say about it is this. I don't think this fits into every comp. When we make comps later, I'm actually going to show you that you probably don't play this every single time. Right now in this season, you do. I actually think that basically you're going to rotate between these 4 tanks. So this is all relatively well balanced. My final notes about tanking this season is that tanks are actually in a really good spot, except for Blood DK, which could use another 10% buff. But otherwise, I'm going to play Guardian Druid. I think Guardian Druid's in a fine spot. It's slightly worse than the other things, but I'm not going to troll my group by playing Guardian. I'm not going to troll my group. Like, if I want to bring Guardian to a key, it'll be absolutely fine. I'm probably going to main Guardian. Yes, I believe this is the objective tier list here. But I don't think that Guardian is troll. I think Blood DK is a little troll. But Guardian Druid, as long as there's no other Druid in the comp, I think that Guardian Druid is actually in a really good spot. And so, yeah, the tier list looks like this. Keep in mind, this is A, that's B. There is not a single tank that is down here anymore. Blood DK getting buffed and the fact that it is immortal in most content until a very high level. Like, every spec has its technical niche, but these 4 have an actual niche. And there are some keys you're going to wish you were a prop pally, some keys you'd wish you were brew, some keys you wish you were a warrior, and some keys that you would wish you were a demon hunter. Most of the time, however, I think you'd wish you were a demon hunter. This is fine, though. Just to clarify, this tank is fine. I will probably play this. I'm going to maintain 2 tanks. If I had to maintain 2 tanks, I would pick Guardian, because it's my favorite, and Demon Hunter, because I think it's the best. And if I had to choose a third, I would choose whichever of these playstyles I prefer. That is how I would rate the tanks right now. Now, let's move on to healers. Okay, healers. Pretty easy. There is actually only a single spec that belongs in a category that I aptly named Split Pea Soup in a Tube. It doesn't get much more rough than that. This is the lowest of the low. Blizzard has officially told you, and at this point you have to accept, okay? You gotta accept that Holy Priest is not meant for keys. It is a raid healer. They have clearly given everyone the full understanding. There's no doubt at this point. Holy Priest is meant for raid. They haven't looked at it. They haven't touched it. They haven't made any fundamental changes to Holy Priest. Dispriest does everything that Holy Priest does, but significantly better. But significantly better. So there's no reason to play Holy Priest. You literally bring nothing. And before you say, but Holy Priest can work. Yeah. You know what else can work? Eating sewage. You might stay alive for a while. Okay? But it's not preferable. Like, you do things to survive in extreme environments. You can drink your own pee if you were ever stranded in a desert, but it doesn't mean you want to. And it doesn't mean everybody else wants to. If everybody else was stranded in the desert with you, you'd be like, here, look, drink this. And they'd be like, oh, man, do I have to? And then basically that's this. And then if you compare this, this is like a delicious, crisp, not Dasani water. This is delicious. This is some high water. This is some Voss water right here. You compare these two and they are incomparable. They're so far from each other that you cannot get even close to this. So Holy Priest belongs here. I will say, I was not going to put anything down here, but the truth is, there's not a single scenario that you would rather be playing Holy Priest than Disc. I can't think of a single time that that would be true. So this, unfortunately, is down here. Okay. We'll rank Disc Priest since we're on healers. Since we're talking about it, we'll just go straight into Disc Priest here. Disc Priest obviously stays all the way in S+. Disc Priest is currently one of the best healers, and the fun thing about Disc Priest is that you actually have options this season, whereas last season you were clearly Oracle, and in Season 1 you were definitely Voidweaver. Now you have a choice. There are some dungeons, maybe like Gambit for example, where you can just blast as Voidweaver. Voidweaver does the second most healer damage out of any healer right now. You can do so much damage as Voidweaver, it's insane. But it might struggle to pass some healing checks. So there are some dungeons where you're like, I feel safe playing Voidweaver, and we're all chilling. Great. You blast as Voidweaver, okay? On the other hand, there are some dungeons where you're like, man, this HPS check is going to be really tough. You can still meet it as Oracle. So actually, one of the fun things about Disc Priest is you have both hero talents. You actually have a choice. You don't play the same thing every dungeon. That's a huge plus. You have flexibility. Unlike Holy Priest, you have flexibility. You can actually choose what it is that you want to play. That's massive. So you have on one hand, you say, this dungeon, I need this dungeon, and you can choose. That's amazing. And it still has everything it has. Obviously, Oracle's been nerfed quite a bit since our original tier list, but it's still Oracle and can still heal just fine. I would say that right now, there are some dungeons where, honestly, there are high HPS requirements, and there are other ones which there are almost no HPS requirements. So they're really interesting where some dungeons, there are healers that can just greed damage the whole time, and that does affect rankings a little bit. But ultimately, if you can't meet HPS checks, you can't be an S+, but Disc Priest can still meet HPS checks. I would say, one of the things I would say is that Voidweaver is much harder, and to caveat this, if you're in a +12 environment, I think Oracle is so much better. Voidweaver depends on your team. You don't have massive shields as Voidweaver, and you also need to plan ramps. So Voidweaver can struggle to deal with significant unexpected damage. You always have healing rolling through Atonement and your damage, so you're basically playing a ranged DPS that heals. That being said, if there's a little bit of damage, it's fine. But if there's big bursts, big casts going through, and you're not prepared for them, Voidweaver can have a really hard time. And if you're like, man, I play Oracle, and I feel everybody feels so safe, but all of a sudden in my next Dawnbreaker, I want to try Voidweaver. I want to try doing big damage. It's like, man, second boss, people are dying. If you don't time your ramps and you don't time everything very, very well, you will struggle to meet HPS checks as Voidweaver. So Voidweaver, I would say, is more of like you have to really game that, whereas Oracle, you play the same way this season, where you just put massive shields on people and you save their life. Also, healer damage is awesome, but the truth is that if you ever let a DPS die, they do more damage than you, so it's never worth letting a DPS die. You should never greed damage if you're ever going to let somebody die as a healer. It's the #1 rule. I think that Oracle fits that profile easily. Oracle is just like, boop, shield, and I save people, all right? Like, you just literally save people, okay? That is amazing. I wish every healer had this. I'm actually still upset that Oracle exists. I'm fine with how Voidweaver is so powerful because it's hard to play. I'm not fine with how powerful Oracle is because it makes every other healer feel bad. There are times where I'm just like, I watch the DPS die. I see that there are 2 casts on him. I'm tracking it. He's not. He doesn't press a defensive. If I was Oracle, he lives. I just hit the one button. Boom. He's alive. But since I'm not playing Oracle, I can't actually save that person. So Oracle makes me feel bad playing other healers, and I don't like that. Great, next healer. We're going to go bottom up. That's Priest, basically. Still S+ tier. It's very good. If they don't change this, the last thing I'll say about this is they have to do something, because otherwise this is always going to be like this. What I've just described will stay going into the next thing, but we'll talk about that more in a second. Listen, we'll keep going here. Next healer. It's not comp dependent. It's just in the lowest of B tier is Holy. This is not comp dependent. It's just kind of bad. It's not the worst. Can you play it? Yeah. But it's not that good. It's not that good, man. It struggles with HPS checks, and I don't like it. Let me put it this way. Let me just casually put it this way. If I'm in a +10 and I see a holy paladin, I'm scared. If I'm in a +15 and I see a holy paladin, I'm scared. If I'm in a +20 and I see a holy paladin, I'm scared. Would they surprise me? Maybe, but you're working a lot harder to do the same thing that other healers can do. Technically, your utility is very good for keys, but this scares me. I don't want to play with a holy paladin because they scare me. I wouldn't trust them at most key levels. They're just hard to play. I don't, I just, even if I had Ellesmere, obviously he's a gamer, but I think that Holy Paladin has a little bit of a coordination check where the output is simply not as high, because you have to make a comparison game. I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying you couldn't play it. I'm just saying other healers can hit one single global and immediately full top the group. Whereas Holy Paladin is not quite like that. You don't actually have back-to-back globals like this. Like, you have to game it a bit. So I think that in very strong HPS checks, H-Pal kind of just falls behind. Its damage is fine. Its damage is solid. If you can do damage, but you have to choose to do damage. So, I'm okay. And a lot of its damage is AoE. Single target when I was playing it. In keys, single target felt low compared to some other options. It's fine. It's a solid spec, but it does not belong in the B, okay? This is interesting because I really think that Mistweaver goes in comp dependent. Like, this isn't comp dependent. It's just B. All right? Like, you know what I mean? This is comp dependent, but it's actually solid. If I was going to rank this, and here's the caveat, if I was going to rank this spec, I would technically put it in the highest of B or low A. I've actually played with a bunch of Mistweavers. Their damage is very solid. Their playstyle is set. They did get nerfed today a little bit, though, and they were also nerfed in the last tuning pass. I would put this in comp dependent. If you want a Mistweaver, it's very good, and it still struggles with all the stuff it struggles with. That's all. I don't really need to talk about this too much more. It's very simple. If you want Mystic Touch and you're not playing with a Brewmaster and you're not playing with a Windwalker, you want this. This is the best healer. It'll totally work. It has a weak tank external, so if you're playing with a Mistweaver, make sure you as a tank are very good. That's it. It's fine for everything else. It can totally heal. It has a very few problems occasionally in some of these things, but ultimately it'll totally work just fine, and that's it. That's all Mistweaver is. It's got good utility, Poison Dispel, Tiger's Lust for the last part of Arcara, etc., etc. Okay, great. Comp dependent. Next, we have the healer that goes here. This one, the A tier. Oh, man, I'm torn. Listen, there are 3 healers left. There are 3 healers left. You guys are going to come at me for this. There's no healer in A tier. There's no healer in A tier. I think that there are these healers, and then there's this healer. Prez doesn't belong in A tier. It belongs in A+ with his current tuning. It's actually incredibly good. The problem with Prez is, A, what comp does it really fit into? The problem with Prez is that obviously it doesn't have a group buff, and there are certain things it works better with than others. The numbers on this spec are actually legitimately insane right now. Even without a group buff, You can see my logs. I will literally post the logs, okay? Listen. I will post my logs. I know you think you're like, this healer doesn't belong there if HPAL and things are down here. Listen to me. Listen. I did 2.2 million overall. Now, granted, Preservation Evoker has to do that much. It has to do more than every other healer because it doesn't have a group buff, okay? This is by the way, this is all with all the current tuning. It is currently July 31st, okay? Is Blessing of the Bronze a joke to me? Absolutely it is. Yes, it is. But its output is insane. Nothing you can't out-heal, nothing you can't do. I will say it does technically have a group buff. You guys want to know what the group buff is? It's called Threads of Fate. The new tier set for Prez is massive. It's called Threads of Fate. It's giga. It's actually really good. You give your team multi-strike. Basically, it just does big damage, okay? The buffs to this spec over the course of the PTR cycle have been pretty solid. Mark my words, this spec is one of those things where if you are very good at it, you will impress everyone. There is literally no healer that will do bigger numbers. If all you care about as a healer, and I mean this, if you just want to end the dungeon with the biggest overall that you possibly could, you play this healer. This healer does more than anyone else. By far. Especially in mass AoE. Now, your single target's still pretty solid, but I would argue the hardest part of Prez is that nobody knows how to play it. It's not even complicated. It's not even, by the way, the hard part of this is not that it's complicated. This spec is easy. No. Everybody gets this wrong. Everybody thinks that Prez is super complicated. It's actually not that complicated. It's super easy, but nobody spent the time on it to understand it. People have been playing Resto Druid for 20 years, but people have been playing Prez for like a month, and that's it. Like, they just don't put the time in. It's not that hard. I made a guide today on stream, people asking when I was playing it in PTR keys, and they were asking, how do you play Prez? I was like, bro, I can explain it to you in 3 minutes. Like, give me 180 seconds, and I'll basically tell you how to play this. It's not that hard. Now, granted, the nuances, just like anything has nuance, like Resto Shaman is a straightforward healer, but has nuance. If you want to get you want to become a master at it, it takes time. Prez has nuance, but really, it's not that hard. Like, a few buttons, and I want to dispel a few myths, because if this is the final tier list I make, I'll make a whole other video talking about this too, because I'm passionate. This is my old main, okay? This is basically my home spec. There are two things that people get wrong about Prez. Number one, they think the range issue is still a thing. It isn't. The range issue is almost no problem, because you used to depend a lot more on your Dream Breath healing and such. It doesn't really matter. Like, if you can't hit people with it, it shouldn't affect their survivability whatsoever. If you have 2 range in Narnia, it's actually totally fine. You position yourself to hit one, and you echo the other. It's not that hard. Problem solved, okay? Echo has infinite range. A mechanic is coming up where you're going to have to split, you just echo. It's fine. Like, range is not a problem on Prez. People get this wrong. And the other thing that people say, as you know, people say all the time, the combos are not hard. The combos are the same as any other healer. I will explain. Listen. The second thing people say about Prez is that it's bad at dealing with pugs. You can't deal with unexpected damage. This is functionally incorrect. This is so wrong. All you have to do is you have your 2 hots rolling on your team. If you have echoes up, you are the best healer at dealing with unexpected damage. There's actually no healer, in my opinion, that's better. Like, you can be a Resto Shaman and everybody gets down to 10%. Unless you have Spirit Link available, you can hit your big cooldown. You can hit Healing Tide Totem. People don't get insta-topped. You hit Tip the Scale Spirit Bloom, everybody's insta-topped. Great. Another cast goes off, everybody drops to 10%, no problem. You just hit the other button, everybody's full health. Great. Another cast goes off. I was healing the Dawnbreaker. I was healing 15 Dawnbreaker today on PTR, and we let a bomb go off on Roshanan. Like, the mage just held it, he forgot to throw it into boss. And I was just like, no problem. And I healed through it. And the next AoE went off, no problem. I healed through it. It's fine. If I was on a Resto Druid thinking, oh, I know when the damage is happening, I haven't even prepped for this, everybody's dead. I don't have recovery buttons. This has the most recovery buttons out of any healer. This is the best healer for pugs, in my opinion. It's just very hard to play in the sense that nobody knows how to play it. But it's not that hard. I swear, it's actually so easy. Yeah, you just as long as you click 3 buttons, look, guys, Temporal Anomaly, Reversion, Dream Breath. Who cares if your Dream Breath is buffed by Call of Ysera? Nobody cares. Temporal Anomaly, Reversion, Dream Breath. And then you echo, echo, echo. That's it. You're like, oh, that's 5 buttons. That's a ramp. Bro, Resto Druid has like full hots that you have to put down. Resto Druid also has a ramp. As the damage is happening, if no damage is happening, you're rejuve, okay? Otherwise, don't press rejuve. And then if you're playing double, if you're playing Germination, you could double rejuve, and then you're going to basically life bloom, the two targets that actually need you, the one that has trio healing, maybe yourself, maybe this person, and then you want to put the F-Low down, and then you need to make sure you regrowth this one and this one, especially if you're playing this talent, and then you Swiftman, and then you Wild... Bro, that's a whole ramp. That's hard. That's way harder than Prez. Prez literally presses half the buttons as that, and you do full healing. So... Prez is super powerful, and the healing on Prez is instant, and you don't have to triage heal either. So let's say one person takes the damage, you can still just heal as if it was AoE. Prez does not have, fundamentally, we need to dispel this myth that somehow Prez has the issues that it used to have, okay? No, rewind, no. It's not even rewind. Guys, it's not rewind, all right? It's not rewind. Rewind is just knowing you'd never play 2 stacks of rewind. You just play the 1 stack of rewind. Rewind is a button that you could almost not even hit in keys. Like, you could, but that's not rewind. You just have to understand how to play Prez. Listen, Prez is absolutely not A. It is, I almost put it in S. If people knew how to play this spec, it would be an S. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually see some people playing Prez. It doesn't have a group buff. It technically can't support the team as much, but you still have Zephyr, Rescue, TD, and a few other things. It's a very powerful healer. The numbers are there. If they nerf it, it drops down. But if they don't nerf it, this actually has what you need in a key. And all I can tell you about this is look at my logs from testing, look at somebody who's good at playing Prez, look at them play it, and you'll be like, oh my God. Oh my God. Really? What? And you'll be like, okay, never mind. Wu was right. Like, I swear, because like you'll just be like, did you just do 5 million DPS? I'll be like, yep. I'll be like, did you just sustain like 4 million? I'll be like, yep. And nobody died? Nope. Why not? Like, it's really, really good, okay? So I don't think you're bringing this to, like, the highest level keys, because it does have some fundamental issues, but the numbers are here, and it has... I feel safer healing Pugs on a Preservation Evoker than I do on any other healer. That's it. I will... Only thing I can say is I'll have to make another video. Yeah, this is going to be a long rant about Prez. I'm going to make another video about this, and I'll just show you. Because I think there's still so many misconceptions about this healer that people don't understand it. I'll just have to show you at some point. I'll just have to actually make a video and explain. I'll be like, this is a hard pull on a Resto Shaman and how I do it there. This is a hard pull on Resto Druid. Now look at Prez and how easy it is. That's all I can say there. Okay, next. Resto Shaman belongs in A+. High A+. Basically, as a healer, it's above Prez. It is technically one of the best options. Borderline S+, except for there's a healer that belongs here that isn't Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman is Resto Shaman, has everything you want. The interesting development of Resto Shaman is the fact that you're probably playing Farseer, and you're not actually playing, okay? You're not playing Totemic anymore. I think you're playing Farseer almost certainly. Totemic might be an option sometimes, but... Actually, Shaman is most likely Farseer. People kind of figured out that the new Farseer set allows you to have an interesting playstyle, and you do big damage, which is nice. You do actual big damage. So I think that Farseer Resto Shaman, solid choice, but I would just say if you're a Resto Shaman, you're probably playing Farseer. It's a bit harder than Totemic. It's not as sleeper. The problem with Farseer versus Totemic is, like, Totemic is really easy, whereas Farseer... Guess what you're doing every 10 seconds? You're pressing your healing rain. Fun fact. All right? Fun fact. Okay? So, you know, I think that Resto Shaman playing Farseer is a little bit harder, but it's still pretty easy. You know, hit your ancestors relatively on cooldowns. If there's a healing ramp, make sure you have an ancestor or two, and then you're solid. There's not much to say about this. It's still a Resto Shaman. Just know you're probably playing Farseer instead of Totemic, and you're going to be a very desired option. It's not comp dependent, Resto Shaman, as long as you don't play DPS Shaman. It's very good and solid. It has everything you want. It has more than what you want. This healer most likely is the best Pug healer of all time. If you had to rank it based on what you should take to your average plus 10 or plus 12, it's a Resto Shaman. It's not a Prez Evoker. It's a Resto Shaman. Like, man, Resto Shaman is just so straightforward, even with Farseer. It's got healing, relatively speaking, all the time, because in a plus 12, you don't have to depend on Ascendance, or you don't have to depend on the Link or the Spirit Tide, the Healing Tide. So I think that Resto Shaman is probably your best bet for a plus 10 or plus 12. 12-second kick, Cap Totem, Thunderstorm, use them. Also learn when to use Earth Ellie to help your tank live. It's amazing. Okay, that's all I need to say about this. You provide a group butt, etc., right? Okay, next, Resto Druid. Resto Druid is clearly an S plus healer. Has a fundamental issue. This is like the best healer right now. Like, it's actually above Disc. You're almost certainly seeing this healer more than anything, but it's got a problem. The problem with this is very simple. It's a numbers game. If they tune it down, it's a tuning game. This is not S plus because it has the best utility for keys, because it has the best absorbs. It doesn't necessarily help your team live. It just has infinite HPS right now. Oh my god, it's so annoying. It has the highest HPS sustained easily without cooldowns on your tank and everything. There's no healer that will make your tank feel safer than a Resto Druid at the current moment. It's not Oracle anymore. Actually, playing with a Resto Druid is just like a magic hack. If you're scared as a tank, just take a Resto Druid. You basically can't die as a tank if you're playing with Resto Druid. If they just casually are actually healing you. Now, granted, the caveat is they cannot be greeting cat form, but like, it's so overpowered. The problem is that it's overpowered, and if they nerf it, it will not be so overpowered. There's a problem with it, which is just that, like, it's a numbers game, because it actually still has a weak external, and you're like, Ironbark is fine. It's like, bro, 20% DR on one person every now and again. Pain Sup, 40% DR 2 charges when you need it. Ironbark is a weak external compared to this. Compared to some of what the other healers can. This is, you literally give Ironbark almost permanently as a shaman. You know that, right? Downpour plus Ancestral Vigor. Bro, like, this is literally, you're giving Ironbark almost perma. So this is just Mark of the Wild. The reason is simply the numbers. The numbers are really, really high on Resto Druid right now, but if that sees a nerf, the tier set in particular for Wildstalker, Resto Druid will fall. So mark my words, you're playing it if there's no nerf, and if there is a nerf, it'll be interesting. I think you'll play it in some... It'll drop to kind of comp dependent if they nerf it too much, because it doesn't technically have the best utility. It doesn't have bad utility, but it's not here because it does things that other healers can't do. It's just really, really strong right now. That's it for that, though. Okay, moving on. We don't have to keep going on the healers and tanks too much. I have made the tier list before. I'm not trying to... I'm going to be honest, right? It's good content. I like talking about the game, and I do want to inform people about what's going on. But the caveat for tanks and healers is, aside from Holy Priest, everything works right now. I've played PTR a bunch. Everything works. Remember that Mistweaver is slightly higher than Holy Paladin. I would take a Mistweaver. I would put it like here, but there are some things that are comp dependent. Like, you will only really play this healer. I just couldn't see you playing a healer. Like, let's say you play a VDH, a Shadow Priest, a Mage. It's like, you're not bringing a Mistweaver to that comp. Like, that just doesn't... I mean, you could, but it's weird. Like, it just doesn't... Like, I just don't think you would do that very much, so I feel like this deserves to be comp-dependent, because you're really playing this if you have physical comps that want it. You're not playing it with a more meta comp, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that that's true, especially when there are other healers that just do more, all right? So there's got to be some understanding here, okay? We'll go over it in a second. Let me just take some salt real fast, because I am dehydrated. Before we move into DPS, I want you to know that tanks are in a really good spot. I'm very happy with the tank balance. In fact, this is the best tank balance we have ever had moving into a season. I've never seen a tank meta that would be better than this one. Right now, you have 4 actually good options. That's amazing. That's so good. Yeah, VDH is dominant, but it's dominant by half a tier instead of 3 tiers. Like, you would want to play a warrior sometimes, or this sometimes, or whatever. After all this is done, I want to go over comps with you, and you'll understand, kind of, you'll be like, oh. So I understand that VDH individually is tuned so highly, but I could totally see why I would bring a warrior, or bring a pally, or bring a this. Like, yes. I actually am very satisfied with how tanks are right now. I'm not complaining about them whatsoever. I think Blood DK could use another 5% or something like that, but even if Bear is slightly lower, I'm still happy to play it. I don't feel trolling at all. Healers, not so much. Healers, not so much. I think that you are literally trolling if you play a Holy Priest into your push team keys when you could learn Disc. If you love Holy Priest, can you play it? Absolutely. Of course, of course, of course. but it will fall off much faster than other healers and doesn't bring anything that you really want. Okay. That makes sense? We all clear on the fact that every tank is very playable right now, and that actually, really in a plus 12, I would really take a Blood DK or a Bear over a VDH. Even though VDH is so good, it's a little harder to play, and if you miss a bunch of globals and gather poorly, which a lot of tanks do at a lower level, you'll die. Doesn't matter how S+ it is, you'll just die. And a Brewmaster, you understand that these two tanks up here are not good for plus 12s. Like, not necessarily, obviously, if you're good at them, they're fine, but the average tank skill level and the ability to express tank skill and bring out the most out of that tank, you're going to probably want something like a Blood DK or like a Bear or a Warrior. I feel like these are solid. If you can play Prop Pally really well, this is the best Pug tank by far. You can just, the success of your keys is much higher with a Prop Pally, but it's harder to play. So ultimately, most tanks at a plus 10 or a plus 12, before we move on to DPS, they don't really milk the tanks. Yeah? They don't milk the tanks. The only tank that should be milked is a Guardian Druid, for obvious reasons. But the other tank specs should not be milked. You understand, yeah? Like, if you try to milk a Brewmaster, that's when you start getting some weird matcha-flavored liquids, and it's not what you want it to be. Right? This one is like, this is where you get strawberry milk from. This is the strawberry milk tank. And that's, you like strawberry milk. It's awesome. All right. Okay. Moving on to DPS before this gets a little bit too wild. And the healers, I don't think the balance is that good right now. I think that these could use a little bit of help. I think that all of these are solid. I think that you will see some comps with Resto Druid. You will see some comps with Dis. You'll see some comps with Resto Shaman. But you will not see Prez, although if you can play it, it's very, very good. It does significant damage. All right? Okay, moving on to DPS. DPS are where this list has changed a lot. If you compare this, by the way, to our original tier list, which I'm going to flash on screen right now. So we're doing 12 Demon Hunter. Okay, I'll respond to this because before we actually move into DPS, I genuinely do think, now, Datho, if people can play them, yes, they're good for that level. But if you were in a key and you're pugging, and you're just like, look, I'm going to do a plus 10. I need a weekly. It's your main character or your alt. Doesn't matter. I can tell you that my personal understanding of how pugging works, I would not want to take a Brewmaster to that key. The perception is not the same as what actually happens in practice. I personally, right now, do not want to take a Brewmaster. If I had a Brewmaster and a Blood DK apply, I would take a Blood DK. I would also maybe just wait for a Warrior or a Bear or this. I'm going to be honest, that's my understanding of the game. This is at a plus 10, a plus 12 level. I genuinely believe that. Because a Demon Hunter at that level doesn't even know how to use their sigils. They don't even know how to use the utility and some of the stuff that makes them so good. And your healer's going to be freaked out about them the entire time. They don't understand a lot of tanks because at that level, you're kind of just playing the game sometimes. There's exceptions. These are generalizations. This is not always true. You might just have a Demon Hunter that's like giga cracked player, but doesn't have a lot of time to play. So he's just farming out some 10s. And he's great. And he's going to carry your key. But it's hard. You know what I mean? I think that in general, if a tank has a fail case of, hey, if you hit your buttons wrong, you insta-die. Those are the tanks you don't want in a 10 because oftentimes they'll hit their buttons wrong and they'll die. So that's like Demon Hunter, Pally, Brewmaster. Those are the tanks that fall into that category. If you play all 6 tanks, you'd understand what I'm talking about. This is very hard to mess up. This is pretty hard to mess up. This one, you're only playing Blood DK if you like it. Honestly, I genuinely believe that the only people who actually play Blood DK for some reason are all Giga Chad people who really are quite good at Blood DK, right? So it's just my opinion that nobody talks about. It's not about what you bring. It's more about the fact that on the average, this is much harder to mess up than this, right? I would just say that if Druid of the Claw is meta, please just play a Loon's Chosen. Like, at your plus 10, if you're a Guardian Druid listening to this and you're like, I'm just going to do some chill keys, play a Loon's Chosen. Very hard to die as a Loon's Chosen. Much easier to die as Druid of the Claw if you play it wrong. So just play a Loon's Chosen. They're very close to each other. You might actually end up playing this. Does that make sense before we move on to DPS? I really think it's so important to understand that. Just like, for example, I don't think that's so true for healers. I think the healers, like, you could take any of these three. This is not a good pug healer. I have to rate it here because I seriously think it's so I think it's so good. Okay. Yeah, this one's so good. But just so you know, this one I can't tell you to take a Pres Evoker to your average +10. I see a lot of people play this spec horridly, and that's okay, right? It's a +10, but this one, not so much. If it's a pug list, I would put this way down here, to be honest. But yes, most people don't, like, their spike uptime is for some reason 20% when it should be 100%. You could say the same thing for warriors, that, like, their shield block for some reason is not 100%, but I think that these are sturdier, they're more straightforward. You know, play Mountain Thane if you need to, and spend all your rage on Ignore Pain versus Revenge. Don't greed damage, you know, etc. Right? If you're skilled, yes. I know. It's always complicated because I can save people as a Pres Evoker, but I know the combos. If you're in an average +10, let's call it a +15 level, Pres is going to be great. But a +10 when you expect people to not do very well, I would if a Pres Evoker and a Resto Shaman apply to your key, you take a Resto Shaman. If a Pres Evoker and a Resto Druid apply to your key, you take a Resto Druid. Okay? Does that make sense? Oh my god, I did spell cheesecake wrong. That's a good call out. You're right. I've been wrong this whole time. Nobody's mentioned that. Aha. Very good. Very good. All right, now we move on to DPS, okay? We're going to move on to DPS. I just think it's important that tanks and healers kind of know what's going on. I think that's important. Did I actually spell it twice in a row? Okay. Let's move on because it's all going to be one video. You know, I don't edit anything. This is all one take. This is from start to finish. We go for it. All right, people are waiting. People are waiting to hear the rest. Because DPS, I think, is where this list starts getting really interesting. There are discrepancies in healers, but tank meta, very, very solid right now. DPS meta is kind of weird. Because it's not bad. Normally, it's kind of way more skewed than this. Let's start with the comp-dependent specs. I don't think there is a single DPS class down where split pea soup in a tube is. I think that the lowest DPS class I will rank here is a C for comp-dependent. There is literally, right? He just said what he meant. It's fine. Yeah. So that's what Pres. We've clarified that already. We're moving on to DPS. I'll blow my nose first because, of course, I'm congested on the day that I want to make a big tier list. Okay. Where were we? Yes, the DPS. Windwalker is not back on the menu. You know that spec got buffed today by 8%, but they also followed it up with a tier set nerf, which is almost 8%. So basically, it's a net neutral. There is no spec. All right, before we actually, let me just review this one more time. Listen to me here. We'll start with Windwalker here in a second, but there is actually no DPS spec that is in this bottom tier. There is no DPS. I actually think every DPS spec will technically have a role somewhere, but C for comp dependent is going to be, this could be really good depending on what you want. So let's go over those. These are niche. Do people understand what this means? Because the very first spec that's going to go in here is a Windwalker Monk. This spec is technically, number-wise, not that good. However, it has Mystic Touch. So the only way you want this spec is if you are playing a, for example, Prot Warrior. As an example, you're playing a Prot Warrior or a Guardian Druid, and you're playing with a Beastmaster Hunter and an Outlaw Rogue for whatever reason, or this or that are all physical damage, and your healer is not a Mistweaver Monk. It's like, this is one of your best specializations. This could be your best spec. Like, literally, this could be the actual best spec you play with if you need Mystic Touch. Single target is not a... No. I can't even say single target is this is not the best single target DPS. You could play 7 other DPS specializations that will clap their single target. Like, this is not single target that high, unfortunately, at all. Of course, in raid performance, you play a different build, but you need to be taking your AoE talents in keys. So this spec, it has nothing. It has nothing going for it. Its damage is decent. It doesn't have the most consistent damage. It doesn't have the most this. It doesn't have anything. It's literally this right here. You bring it to have Mystic Touch. If you are playing a comp that wants Mystic Touch and you don't have Mystic Touch from your Brewmaster or your Mistweaver, you play Windwalker. Then in which case, it could be the best spec. But you are depending on that setup, which is kind of tough to find. Windwalker stonks, I would say, a little bit down. But yeah, the tier set nerf today was enough, although it got buffed by 8%. Honestly, this spec could straight up use the Fury Warrior treatment. That is hilarious. I cannot believe I just said this, okay? Fury Warrior is comp dependent, but this is almost certainly getting played. It's comp dependent, but it is literally getting played. You will see a bunch of Fury Warriors. In fact, if I was to rank it individually, it actually goes in A tier. You're like, no, it doesn't. Yes, it does. Because they buffed this spec the right way. This is an example of Blizzard actually doing something correctly, all right? Let me explain to you what happened. They said, Fury Warrior AoE is real bad. Let's buff the interaction of how they do AoE. So they did. They gave it an extra 10% for all abilities cleaved by Whirlwind, okay? Or by, if you're playing Mountain Thane, by Thunderclap. That's a good change. You know what they could do for Windwalker? The same thing. They could alter some of the values that let this cleave onto 5 targets. But instead, they just go 8% aura buff. That's not what Windwalker needs, because then they have to balance it for raid. Windwalker doesn't need an aura buff. It needs a look at how it does AoE damage. Fury Warrior actually got that. Fury Warrior is a decent warrior. If you want a warrior, Fury Warrior is going to be that warrior. In fact, Warrior is interesting because the Arms Warrior comes right after. I think Fury is slightly better than Arms. I think that you'll play both. I think that if you're a warrior main in a high-level team, what you're going to end up doing is there are some dungeons you'll play Fury and some dungeons you'll play Arms. If the dungeon is uncapped AoE, you would consider Arms. And if the dungeon is solid for Fury, you'll play Fury. Think about Streets of Wonder versus Tajavest Gambit. They're two very different dungeons. Fury is a solid DPS. Is it? I would argue that Fury is about 1 million DPS behind in overall. That's significant. 1 million DPS, solid amount. You're like, damn, that's 1 million DPS? That's kind of a lot, isn't it? Yeah, Battle Shout adds about 1.5 million DPS to your group if you're playing with a team that benefits from Battle Shout. So overall, you're good. But you have to understand that if you are one of these 4 specs right now, you are accepting the fact that you are the new Evoker. You are not individually powerful. You exist to buff your team. It is something to accept. Until Blizzard changes how group buffs work in Mythic Plus, these 4 specializations will almost never do top overall. They cannot. Because they exist. They exist to buff. Mistweaver being a healer is a little different here. But these 3 specs of Mythic Plus are now effectively, from this point onward, cucks. It's just the way it is. Like, you are there to help other people do big things. And you are just doing your medium things. You're not that bad. You can totally play them, but they're comp dependent. Basically, this is what with respect, like, this is how it works now. I don't know why they decided to go this route. I understand that raid buffs are important for raid, because otherwise you could play 20 fire mages or whatever it is. But for keys, raid buffs are a balancing nightmare. They have shown they don't mind a spec having a raid buff and also being one of the best specializations. But effectively, this is just here now. Do you know what I mean? This is, 5%, 5%, 8%, but the problem is they were so far behind. This is decent. I'm telling you right now, this is one of the best DPS specializations if you want Battle Shout. But that's an if you want Battle Shout. It's that simple. If you don't want Battle Shout, this spec does nothing. It offers no value to your team. If you're playing Prot Warrior, you would never, ever, 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 ever play this. If you're playing a Brewmaster, you would never, ever, ever, ever play this. It doesn't work. Like, you exist for your group buff, which is kind of strange because I don't think that's a very nice feeling. Like, I wouldn't want to play an Arms Warrior knowing I'm going to be perfect and just straight up, I'm not going to match my other people. But if you look at group buffs, you know, my Frost Decay looks like he's doing that much, but I'm actually doing a lot of his damage. It's like, I don't like that. That's Evoker. That's basically just the balance of Evoker, right? Yeah, this is after tuning. This is with the most recent tuning. I'm telling you, these specs are decent. Like, they're not bad. You're actually, like, I guarantee you that some of the highest level teams will play a Fury Warrior. I'm just telling you how it is. You'll look at the meters and you'll be like, why is a Fury Warrior there? And it's like, because he's buffing people. So that's basically what this is, right? That's what this is. Yeah, okay. 5% was last week, last tuning notes. These got 5%, but also this got more looked at because this didn't just get 5%, it got 10% on his Whirlwind Cleave. That's a big buff to Fury. That's how, if you've never played Fury before, which is likely, this is a big buff to Fury. Okay, moving on. Something else that's comp dependent and it deserves to be here, okay? There's another spec that's comp dependent. That is an interesting one. Are you ready for this? Aug Evoker is unfortunately not bad. It was here, and then they buffed it. It's actually not bad. In fact, and I hate this. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But I played with an Aug Evoker today, and they were not bottom DPS. They were the second DPS. They were actually pretty decent. Now, granted, I played with a title Aug Evoker who is a good Aug Evoker and has been trying to play Aug Evoker for a long time. So he's good at the spec. I was playing with basically one of the best Aug Evokers that I know, okay? But he was not bottom DPS. He was the second DPS. I logged it, I checked the runs after, and he was second DPS consistently. No. Bad. This spec should not be good. They made a mistake. Aug Evoker was not a support spec, it was a mistake. This spec should never have been introduced to World of Warcraft. It only causes problems. It doesn't help you. It doesn't make the game better. It makes the game worse. Okay? You're like, I'm not talking individually what it does. I'm not talking about the fact that it has CC, this, I don't care. The problem with Aug is that it's a tuning nightmare, because if it's good for the highest level, it's really, 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 really bad for the keys that we might do the first week, okay? Like, it's just absolutely terrible for a 10 and a 12, okay? I'm going to be doing the level of keys where Aug Evoker might be good. But for a 10 and a 12, do not, for the love of God, don't take the spec. It's not meant for that. It doesn't work for that, because it depends way too much on your other two DPS doing good and the key going well. There are so many problems with Aug that it's just not good for World of Warcraft. It's not that I don't like the idea of it. I actually used to main it. I mained this spec to a pretty reasonable IO and a CE guild. I played Aug. I had good logs. I did good. I was a good Aug Evoker, okay? And I'm telling you that it's not good for the game. I actually like this spec. Believe it or not, I think this spec is giga fun to play in keys. It's actually super fun to play. It's complicated, though, but it's super fun to play. That's not my issue with it. My issue is not personal. My issue is the fact that it disproportionately affects you, not me. It's actually, yeah, this doesn't affect me. I actually wish I could play Aug. It's actually one of my favorite range specializations. But if it exists as a good spec, as a potential spec that you see people playing, oh no, it just doesn't work. I'm telling you, it just doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work for most for 80-90% of players. This thing doesn't feel good for anyone. The other fundamental issue is that you can't tell if people are doing well or not. You have no idea. The fact that you have to log this, how many people log their keys? Like 5% of the player base? You would have no idea. The one issue I have with Aug, let's say the key goes well, actually, and the Aug is a valued member of your team. How good did I do? You have no measurement of that. You can't look at details and just be like, oh, I did really good. You wouldn't know. Like, maybe your Aug is the best Aug Evoker you've ever played with, and maybe he sucks and you had a great key, but it kind of it leeches the value of being a DPS player. You don't even get that crazy high dopamine because you're like, was that me? It's a weird feeling for DPS. It's a weird feeling because you're like, do I add these people? Were they good or was the Aug good? It's just a nightmare for the average key level. This spec is just not good for that. Like, you can't control whether or not it's actually good or not because that depends on the whole team and the route and the this. But it mostly depends. Like, remember, if your DPS die, which happens a lot, then you are losing 2 DPS instead of 1. That's a big problem because, again, you're like, well, if it happens. Not if it happens. It's a plus 10. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Do you know how common it is for a plus 10 or a plus 12? You finish a boss fight with 3 or 4 DPS alive, like 3 or 4 players? It's pretty common for somebody to die to a mechanic, especially in the first few weeks of a season when they're learning the dungeons. You're going to have like 3 people who kind of know what they're doing, and the 4th person who maybe gets lucky, and the 5th person who didn't know, and they die. And imagine now you have one of your DPS as an Aug Evoker. You're in trouble, dude. You're in trouble. Like, that key is all of a sudden you're inting yourself. So this thing has problems. It actually you might literally see this in some comps at the very highest level. Don't take it to your 10. If you really want to play Aug and you're listening to this and you're like, man, he makes some good points, but I really wish I could play it in a pug. It's like, make some friends and bring it and like you should play it at a higher key level. This is a spec that might actually do decent at a higher key level comparatively to a lower one, okay? But that's my rant about Aug. I think I've made my case, so we'll move on, all right? Yeah, okay? So we'll move on, okay? Now, the next specialization, okay? I don't think they're going to rework it, but I think they need to leave it bad. I don't think they can do this. Okay, all right. I'm excited about this next one. Let me tell you, this does bring a smile to my face. Because I think there is another spec that belongs in C for comp dependent. And it makes me happy. Finally, we are free from the plague that is Boomy. I just want to take a moment to bask in the fact that this spec is not S tier. It's not soup, no. It's comp dependent. There's a world where you might want to play it, but individually, it's not that good. There's a world where realistically, I think it's a little bit troll to put this here, but I kind of think it could be low B, but it's definitely not A. It's definitely not here. This does bring a smile to my face. I've said it before. I will say it again. Okay? No one really likes playing with them. Okay? No one really likes playing with them. Tanks hate them because they're always dotting and full sending their starfalls as you're trying to pull, so aggro's a nightmare. Healers hate them because they never bear form the obvious mechanic. I just think it's time for them to take a season off. All right? If they hadn't been really good for a while, I would feel bad. But I'm okay with this. The other spec that belongs here and isn't here is Mage. But this one, they did nuke it. Keeper of the Grove is dead. Let me explain, okay? Let me explain why this is here in a serious manner now. Keeper of the Grove is dead. They nuked that. I mean, they took that and they literally, they went out back and they were like, old yella, it's time. They just literally took it out back and shot that. It's gone. It's gone, okay? So Keeper of the Grove is dead. The only option you have is to play Elun's Chosen. Elun's Chosen does not have the benefit of anything except for relative overall damage. You're providing Mark of the Wild, but there are other choices for Mark of the Wild. So the reason it's comp dependent is if you need Mark of the Wild and you're playing a full caster comp and for some reason you really want Mark of the Wild, it could be beneficial. But you are not going to be doing as much damage as some of the other things could be. You also have no prio damage and low single target. Like, you're there for pad tier list. You're there for pad AoE. Like, you are a padder at this point. You're starfalling and you're starfiring. You are not sending single target prio damage. You are just full blasting. You have all the limitations. I will say your utility is not bad this season, right? You have Curse Dispel for some of the dungeons that you want it, like Dawnbreaker. You have you have Poison Dispel for Arcara. You have Vortex, which is really good for a few pulls. So your utility is pretty solid. You could also argue Aug Evoker also has good utility, okay? I think I have seen some show me that they can still do some damage, but I don't really see why you would bring it unless you're very specifically like, look, I'm playing VDH, but I'm playing with a Disc Priest. We have an Arcane Mage and a Shadow Priest. But you wouldn't play Shadow Priest with Disc Priest. Maybe you have a Resto Shaman, but you have Shadow Priest. And you're just like, I'm curious now. So what would I play? What would I bring the 5th spec? Would I play a Warlock here? Would I play Havoc? Would I bring a Boomy? Like, maybe you bring Boomy because it's an option. But there is another Druid spec, which is actually decent. It got buffed twice. I don't even think that Feral is comp dependent. I think Feral is significantly a solid B tier. I think that actually, if you really want a Druid DPS, I think that Feral is better than Boomy. I think that the buffs to Feral actually give it decent damage, even if you're not playing a full physical comp. I don't think that Feral exists only in physical comp now. I think they've buffed it enough that it's its own individual DPS. If it was comp dependent, I would put it the highest in comp dependent. You will play Feral in a few comps for sure. But even if you weren't playing a physical comp, I think Feral is a decent DPS. I think it's solid. Remember, caveat, at this point, I feel like you could even put it in A, but I think that Feral is actually really solid. Yeah. The reason it's solid is that it's tanky. So this is tankier than Boomy. And to clarify, before you come at me, because if you come at me and you're like, this is wrong, let me tell you why. Solar Beam is so good. No, it's not. Solar Beam is good in a coordinated group. Solar Beam is the worst kick in the game compared to Shadow Priest only in a pug. Do not forget the key I was doing yesterday on stream, where when did my Boomy use Solar Beam? When did he do it? Do you remember? Was anybody there? The one mob in Narnia, he would just send it as a single kick. Not once in that key did he actually send it on the pack when there were 5 casters or 3 casters. He would just be like, oh, whoa, one mob over there. That's just, you would rather have a Feral kick in that case every single time. So I think that Boomy Beam is overrated in lower keys. It's not underrated in higher keys when you can combine it with the right things. That's actually really impactful, like to know this spec does better in higher keys. It now has a ramp time and has some more consistent DPS. So I think that this is up here. It's a very off time for an alarm to be going off outside. Let's pretend that doesn't exist. Okay. So this is here, okay? Demo Lock has a stun. Actually, a stun kick is sometimes much better than a regular kick. There are some mobs where you would rather them be stunned for a few seconds as well, okay? Hopefully that's not too loud out there. Listen, okay. Feral Druid is here. Feral Druid's solid. It actually has okay funnel, but realistically it's just a decent DPS. It's tankier than Boomy because you have survival, and that's good. Survival instincts. Okay, that's Druid right there. You really want Mark of the Wild. This is the most likely way you are bringing Mark of the Wild. But I will say that you have options between these other Druid specs. That's why this is comp dependent and not down here. Like, it's not, I'm not saying this is the worst spec, but in the same way that sometimes you would play Fury Warrior, which is also decent, you will sometimes play Boomy, which is decent. Okay? That's the thing. Like, these are not that different now. These two things right here are kind of interchangeable. I like that. Like, this is not Giga S+. It's actually just like, you want a Fury Warrior sometimes. You want a Boomy sometimes. Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, great. So that's that. Moving on. We have, what specs do I want to go over next? We're going to try to go bottom up here. All right, here's where things get interesting. All right. So basically, like, you want Mark of the Wild. Mark of the Wild is give or take. Do the math. Mark of the Wild, by the way, is 900 to 1,000,000 DPS. Give or take. In a key. Depends heavily on how much damage your group does, but if you do the math, 3% verse, on average, let's say you have to do 30 million overall with your tank and your heal and everybody. There's about 30 million overall, then it's about 900k, right? That's the math, something like this. I don't know the exact numbers, but something like this. So let's say that everybody does, you have a DPS do 10 million, a DPS do 9 million, and your Boomy does 8.5. That actually means that your Boomy is now bringing about 900k, which means that it goes right here in the middle. Do the math on group buffs. Yeah? This is Mythic Plus only. This is not raid. I don't raid. I don't like raiding. I don't want to raid stuff. Raid is super weird. The balance of raid and what you need becomes a completely different thing, and damage profiles start to get really funky in raid. It's a whole other thing. So let's just keep with Mythic Plus. Only Mythic Plus, okay? Next, I want to go over one of the specs, and we're just going to rank it right now. We're just going to full send it. Let's go over Warlocks. Warlocks all got giga buffed. Like, from the inception of PTR, when these guys were real bad, Affliction is A tier. It hasn't gotten Vile Taint reworked at all. Please give it a second charge and /or 10 seconds off the CDR on it so that you could just refresh your agonies in the middle of a pull if you so choose to. Affliction got the massive thing that it got is just nice overall, but specifically, the buffs to its Malefic Rapture prio damage gives it actual funnel. This spec has legitimate funnel now for higher keys. It's good. It's good. Like, basically, let me put it this way. You will bring a Feral Druid and an Affliction Warlock, and an Affliction Warlock will beat your Feral Druid in overall, okay? So, Affliction Warlock will simply do more damage than these specs. But remember, it doesn't have a group buff. So if Affliction Warlock beats your Boomy by 500k, then Boomy is better. If Affliction Warlock beats your Boomy by 1.5 million, it's very good. If it's if it beats it by 1 million overall, but its single target is much higher, Affliction Warlock is good. Hellstones don't count. We're talking about damage. So Affliction Warlock, of all the Warlock specs, is decent, but I can't rate it that much higher than A tier. Like, I can't bring it higher than this because it does have some fundamental issues. But Affliction Warlock is actually really decent right now. I would say that there's a lot of bad ones. It's kind of hard to find sometimes. It has a ramp time. One of the main problems with Affliction is that it is less good at a plus 10, and it is more good at a plus 15. All right? This is interesting. The Warlock specs have changed because that's Affliction right there. Demo Warlock, I literally had this spec like really high up there. Like, it was doing one of the highest single target before, but it's been nerfed. Demo Warlock is solid. Demo Warlock is solid. It's a solid spec. I'm torn between the bottom of A+ and a high A. I feel like high A is solid for demo right now, and I'll explain why. Single target's still solid, but with the nerfs to the spec, it's not like its numbers are the most cracked out of anything here. It's reliable, its damage is very consistent, it doesn't depend on big-ass cooldowns, whereas Affliction does. If you walk into a pull with no cooldowns as Affliction, it's despair. Your tank will beat you in damage, so you have to plan a little bit, okay? This here is a decent spec, fine spec, good damage, solid, no problem. I think that the problem with this is that it's not quite. Yeah, I just feel like you're gonna have good damage. You might not be top overall, you won't be bottom, you'll be right in the middle of the pack. Solid spec, nothing wrong with it, fairly tanky, no group buff, etc. I think that Feral, if anything, I'm actually less confident about Feral in B. I think I could put Feral in A. I would actually hear that argument 100%. I genuinely do think that Feral is, like, really blasting right now. The problem is that I haven't seen it post-buff. I just don't see a lot of Ferals on PTR. I know, based on my own understanding of the math here, this used to be comp dependent. Like, this used to actually be a spec that required this. But I'm talking about, let me finish Warlock first, okay? Warlock is here. I'll talk about Feral after. Destro Warlock. Sleeper pick. Sleeper pick right now. Just incredibly high overall damage. Solid single target. It was slightly nerfed today, but not enough. It's just solid damage. Like, this spec, very realistically in a key with AoE, this is going to be your top damaging spec. You might actually see this top the meters, okay? Now, there's a few specs that I'm going to rank highly, and we need to go over something, all right? We need to go over something. Listen, you will see other tier lists. If you're watching mine, you might watch others. Other tier lists are going to talk about this thing called funnel damage and prio damage, and how the thing is dependent on how you cannot play Destro Warlock because it's pad damage. In a plus 12 and even a plus 15, nobody knows what that means. The only thing that people care about, perception-wise, is at the end of the dungeon, did you have good overall damage? They will look at details. They will not look at logs. Nobody will check how much damage you did to Big Mama in Floodgate. They will just see the fact that you did the most overall damage. Destro can be that spec. Okay? Destro actually could be that spec that just does giga overall. But you gotta understand that this whole conversation about prio and this and the fact, nobody cares at the average key level, and they don't even understand what that means. They just think it means single target damage. I can tell you, as somebody who pugs and plays many ults at all levels, okay? There are times where I'm on one of my main specs and I'm doing a relatively higher key, and I can tell the difference between a good player and not, right? I can tell you that on my PTR testing when I got to play with Gingy and Petco and a bunch of amazing people on the PTR, it's not like their damage was that much higher than other people's damage. But when I was in a pack in Halls of Atonement, that pack died at the same time. Whereas there will be specs who just pad, and you won't actually kill the shard at the same time as all the other things. There was not a single pull with that team. That day that I got to play with Gingy, for example, every dungeon we did, the pack died dead even. So the key was significantly faster. There is a world where there are specs that do that, but I also know what pugging a plus 12 is like. And you go into the first pull of Floodgate, and that thing is alive. That Shredder is alive. It's 40%. Everything else is dead. That's technically slowing down your key. But the timer doesn't matter in a plus 12. So people will only look at overall. There are some specs which I will rank quite highly because their overall is going to blast. This spec, technically speaking, cannot be S+. The highest level keys would rather take an Affliction Warlock over a Destro Warlock because this will do more of the damage that you want it to do compared to this. But your pug won't understand that. And this is going to be a better spec because it just does good damage, okay? Okay, things don't even have enough health in a plus 12 for you to properly ramp funnel damage anyways, just to clarify, okay? So to rank prio damage. All right, next. I'm going to look at this list after and decide. The rankings are a little weird because it's hard to say. Like, some of this stuff, like, this would technically be better than this or whatever in the right comp, but I could see Feral Druid actually, I could totally see an argument for it just being A, and I think that's very fair. I would love to see it post-buff. I could very much see this spec being just a solid A tier, and an alternative way. Like, if you don't play a Resto Druid, I could totally see you just bringing a Feral into a lot of comps. So I totally hear that argument, and I'll accept it. I think I'll move Feral to A right now, okay? Okay, moving on. Those are Warlocks. All Warlocks, very decent specs. There's another spec that got this treatment, which is a Rogue. Rogues started the tier list like this. This is what Rogues looked like. Rogue was like this. This is how it started on the PTR. And it's wrong. And it's wrong, dude. And it's wrong. This is not correct anymore because all rogues have been gigabuffed since the inception of PTR. Number one, Subtlety is still kind of, I think, in a rough spot, and I find this to be a very complicated spec to rank. I believe I would put it at the bottom of comp dependent, right? Let me put these down here for now because we're going to go over each rogue spec. I have a problem with this spec, okay? I have a problem with this spec. I had a Subtlety Rogue in the streets yesterday who did 3 million overall, which is very, 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 very low. He was significantly below me, the tank. That would lead me to believe that it's split pea soup. It's bad. Real bad, real bad, real bad. Dumpster fire bad. Literally, okay? But I also had a Subtlety Rogue in a Gambit who was doing fair AoE. And that was decent, solid B. I've also seen Subtlety Rogues who are like pumping, but pumping to an extent. So of all three rogue specs, I still think Subtlety deserves its place at the bottom of the rogue specializations. But there's a world where there are very good rogue players, Shindig, Casual, etc., who can make this spec really shine. And maybe there's a world where it actually, and you are like, oh, who was wrong? Subtlety is considered an A+ spec? Maybe. But in my opinion, it is, you would rather play Assassination every time instead of Subtlety. The way that Subtlety deals damage, as far as I currently understand it in its iteration, Rogue is the spec I understand the least, probably, out of any spec, because I don't like playing it. The last time I tried to play Rogue was Shadowlands, okay? And I played Subtlety back then. It's quite different now. But my understanding is that although you can funnel, you are basically just padding. Like, if you're just basically building combos and then you're sending the black powder, then it's the same argument for Destro, this and that. You're just padding. And that's what a lot of rogues will do to get better overalls. Because if you're talking about funnel prio damage, why would you play Subtlety when you could play Assassination? Assassination Rogue. Oh, man. I don't know about this one. This one's hard for me to rank. I think that Assassination is a very good spec now. It's been buffed enough that I'm curious about it. I think that Assassination Rogue is a very good specialization. But this is context dependent. In a team that really wants this and can play around it and really wants the funnel, this could be like S. I don't think it is because it's a little bit dependent, but it's a solid spec. Like Assassination, I think, is probably one of the premier rogue specs at the moment. It's been buffed enough where it just does a lot of damage. The way it deals damage is solid. It kind of depends on the single target is lower, but a lot of these bosses you can pull trash on, in which case it's good. Yeah? Oh, thank you. I'll stretch. That's a good point. This tier list obviously is going on a bit, but this is probably the final one. And I think that it's important to understand these types of things. If you're trying to make keys, if you're watching this, then you're probably trying to understand. It's like, hey, look, whether or not I do a 10, a 12, or 15 in the first few weeks is I just want to understand what should I invite, what should I not invite. And I'm hoping that this list can give you some clarity on understanding. If you want to play a spec and you're like, look, I really want to play Mistweaver. Can I play it? Is it possible? Is it possible? Like, I know you're putting it all the way down here, but this is my favorite spec. Yes. But you probably want to make friends. Like, you will play a Mistweaver. You want a Mistweaver if you're playing with a few different specs up here. If you're playing a Prot Warrior with no Windwalker, Mistweaver is fantastic. I would love to play with a Mistweaver. I, as a Guardian Druid, want to find either Mistweaver or Windwalker to play with because I like having a monk buff. I would love it. If I knew a good monk, I would add him to B tag and I would be like, yo, want a game? I'm happy to, as a tank, route a little bit differently and just play my Guardian Druid with a Fury Warrior and a Windwalker Monk. Sounds like a great time to me. I'll play that comp, no problem. But if you're queuing for things, it can be tough. Like, if you are like, look, I could play, realistically, my two favorite healers are Resto Druid and Mistweaver Monk. It's like, bro, you could play either? You don't have a preference? You're like, yeah, I could play either. I would be totally happy playing both. Resto Druid. That's your choice. There's not a choice. You're like, I could play Holy Priest or I could play Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman. If you have both options, a lot of people nowadays in World of Warcraft don't play one character. They actually have a few options. Play the thing that's better, right? But ultimately, you can still play the things down here. It just might be harder for you to find groups. That's the thing. The perception on these things is important. Okay, so that being said, if you're going to play Rogue, right? If you're going to play Rogue and you're like, look, I have 3 Rogue specs. I could play any of them. Which one should I invest my time into? Well, guess what? You could just change. Nobody really checks your Raider IO to see if you were Subtlety or Assassination in your last key. It'll just appear as DPS IO. So you could actually just, for once, by the way, just like change your comp depending. You could just be like, I'll play Subtlety for now if I want to. If this ends up being really good, you could play it. But I think Assassination or Outlaw are going to be your best bets. Outlaw is super interesting. Outlaw is hard, man. Outlaw is tough. Outlaw is something that I don't really know how to rank. I want to rank it like highly because it just has the damage profile that's so good for keys. Yes, it's target capped, but it's also really, 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 really consistent. And we talked about at the beginning of this tier list that consistent damage is the best possible thing you can do for lower key levels, okay? Like it's so good. It's so good to have consistent damage. This does not depend on you pulling any which way. This does. This does. If you don't pull anything on a boss, this goes like this, right? This doesn't care. This has some funnel in Blade Fury, but really, this just goes boom. This just goes no matter what. Pull big, great. Pull small, great. Pull this, great. Pull single target, okay. Like, this just does good in all contexts, and I think that is a big up for Outlaw Rogue, okay? I think I went on a whole rant about sub. Before you come at me for this, you got to actually go back and listen to why I put this here, okay? Because I have seen it 3 different times on PTR where I had a rogue who just did less damage than me as a tank. So I don't know what it is exactly about sub. I have not played it in its current iteration. I didn't try it on PTR myself. I don't know why, but there's something about this spec that you're just like, for some reason, some people can't play it and they will do negative DPS. Maybe this is good. The good news is that your 2 other rogue specs are actually both decent here. So the congratulations if you're a rogue, you just swap. This ends up being really good. Congratulations. Change specialization. Done. Recraft a ring. Use a dungeon ring. Done. So easy, right? Like, this is the thing about playing a pure DPS spec. You're like, Warlock, they end up buffing Affliction. Great. Change specialization. Play Warlock. It's easy like this. So I think that Subtlety is here. I don't even think that Outlaw is comp dependent. I just think Outlaw is solid. It doesn't have a group buff. Technically, I could put Outlaw in comp dependent, but I think I would be trolling if I put Outlaw's DPS in the same category as Windwalker. Like, this can do big overall. Like, you can just top the overall meters as Outlaw. You won't top the overall meters as Windwalker. So I think that this could be here, depending on a few things. But as I've already mentioned, that's Rogue. Okay, next, we will go to Ret Pally. Everybody wants to know, where's Ret Pally? Ret Pally got buffed today. It got buffed last week. It got buffed the week before that. Where is it? Where is Ret Pally? This becomes a key thing. I think that Ret Pally, I really want to see it post-buff. I think Ret Pally is very solidly A. It's definitely not B. I don't know if it's A+. There's a world where it's A+. I need to see it a little bit more, but it's a very solid spec. Single target is a little weak. When I played it earlier, single target is definitely a little bit weak, but the truth is, good overall is good overall. Also, this spec can save your team if you're a good Ret Pally. So, very strong utility, but mostly just good overall. Good overall equals good community perception. Also, can I just say one thing as a Ret Pally? If this is my last chance to talk about this before the season starts, if you're a Ret Pally player and you skip to this part of the video, please, you have an 8-second immunity on a pretty short cooldown. Use it. Please. The amount of times that I am healing a Ret Pally who for some reason does not understand or ever use the most broken defensive in the game, and they die, makes me sad. Please use your defensives. You are really tanky. Please press the button. It's very good. That is what I have to say about Ret Pally. Okay? Please. Every single healer who is listening to this is also praying with me. Okay? Trust me, everybody who's listening to this rant right now, they're like, I will pray with a woo, okay? Remember that the tanks are ranked individually. Tanks and healers are kind of in their own category. They're in the same tier list. It's kind of hard to rate tanks and stuff in the same thing, right? It's a little bit hard because you can't compare exactly what this tier list is here. I would just rank it. You can look at my ranking based on where I put the thing. So, for example, these two, I think that this is the most likely to see play out of the things in comp dependent. I think that in terms of DPS, I really think Ret Pally is going to be it's going to shine more than an Affliction Warlock as an example, right? It's just, you can't compare roles because their understanding of why you would bring them to a key is completely different. So you cannot compare roles. You can only compare this. Does that make sense? Just to clarify, okay? The buffs to Ret Pally do not address the problem with Ret Pally. As of today, the buffs were decent, but it's just a nice little bit of AoE pad. Like I said, the biggest thing about Ret Pally is that it's very hard to get it wrong. You could literally smash your head against the keyboard repeatedly and do well on this spec. That is very important because, again, for a plus 12, you ask me who cares about you got to understand, man. People love World of Warcraft. People love World of Warcraft. It's this tier list is an example. It's hard to condense what a plus 20 would want and what a plus 10 would want. It's very difficult to condense it because they're different things. What I can do is have a conversation. This isn't for plus 2s or plus 8s, but a lot of people's goal in the season is to get their portals, and they care deeply about that. But you cannot ever say to somebody who only cares about getting their portals that they're not invested in WoW. No, it does not. It does not. Because they are equally as invested as you, they just play the game in a different way. And that is absolutely fair. There are tons of people that I know that want to get their portals or their goal is 3K IO and watch every single tier list and watch every single WoW podcast because they love this game and they have immense passion for World of Warcraft. But you cannot ever be elitist and say, listen, I do title level keys. I'm fighting for my last plus 20 right now. This person doesn't even like the game. Stop yourself in your tracks, okay? Stop yourself in your tracks because that's a misunderstanding of what game is. if you are doing keys at an 18, 19, 20, you are literally less than 1% of the population who plays World of Warcraft. And also, the way that those keys are done, I would call it right now, I'd say plus 19 or 20, like pushing to that level right now on live, requires a different type of gaming. Most people end up getting in Discord. Most people can call things. Kicks are actually called out. And the difference between a 20 and a 19 is the fact that in the 20, you have a shot caller who's actually calling things. And in a 19, maybe you can get away with kind of YOLOing it. But there are some things that shine and some things that don't. But this is so important because we're watching a tier list and we're talking about it. And I'm telling you what specs that you might want to consider inviting or not inviting. These are generalizations. They don't apply to everybody. There's going to be some sub-rogue out there who's going to be the best sub-rogue you could ever invite to your key. You shouldn't not take him based on this. But also that sub-rogue maybe would consider swapping to one of these to get invited. Like, I think that that's a fair assumption. Because if I don't make this list, somebody will. And the perception on your spec is so important. It's like, I'm telling you that you're going to have a hard time as a Fury Warrior. But what you could do is, understanding this, you could be like, yo, look, maybe I can find a good Brewmaster to play with. There's going to be a Brewmaster. I play with a good one. Can I tell you what to do if you're playing one of these specs? Let me tell you. Play the first week of the season. You'll get invited. Everybody will be playing first week of the season. You'll get invited. Do your own key. Run your key. If the key gets timed, you add people. You say, GG, go next. Before people leave the party, don't let them leave. If you time a key, especially if you're in the comp dependent, if you want to play Mistweaver or Windwalker or Fury Warrior, and the key goes well, you found a good synergy to play with, talk to them. Hey, can I add you for more keys? Yes, great. WoW is a social game. WoW is a social game. And it doesn't matter if your goal is plus 10s and their goal is plus 15. At the beginning of the season, you're at the same place. It's the best time to make friends. First week of the season is the best time of all because you don't know if the person you're playing with is actually going to cap out at plus 20s. Currently, all they really want is plus 10s. Okay? Like, it's a social... Unfortunately, I know, guys. I know. Hear me out. I know. I didn't mean to scare you, okay? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but WoW is a social game. You are supposed to talk to people. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for scaring you. Okay? Add people. Talk to people. If you're in this comp right here and you're like, I really want to play this one of these specs, just add people. Like, start talking to people, okay? It's actually, it will help you a lot, okay? You could emote with people. That's fine. You fine. You could just emote. That's fine. But just communicate. Add people. Just add B tag. Make a little community. Something. Have a Discord. Whatever you do. But this is, trust me, it's the way that you progress keys. If you want to go from somebody, you're like, listen, I've only ever gotten 3K, but next season I really want to go for 3.5. Great. BNet. Like, your answer is BNet. You could be like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-roll to the meta spec. Okay, that could work. But also, BNet. Start adding people. Right? You find a really good feral druid, add him. Anyways, I'll continue on that rant another time. I will drive that home forever. I think people greatly misunderstand how to actually get better at keys, and it's a lot of knowledge, etc. Right? There are some people I know who may not have the best resume for keys, but I think they're cracked players. They just never put in the time. So there are some people who, if they told me, they were like, yo, I want to push this season. I'll be like, great, what are you playing? And they're like, I'm playing Windwalker Monk. I'll be like, sweet, let's go. I don't care. Because I know I'll just be like, great, you're playing Windwalker Monk? Let's find a Fury Warrior. Let's blast. I'll adjust the route. Let's do it. Let's go time some shit. Let's go do it. That's great. Excellent. Right? Why not? Like, this is the thing with tier lists, is you got to understand that most things are actually comp dependent. I will say that, like, if you were like, I'm playing a Holy Priest, I'd be like, ooh. The thing is, I already have a healer for this season, and I'm really busy these days. We'll try to get something in. Like, it's gonna be one of those. Like that, I will say, if you're telling me that you won't play disc and you're like, I'm a Holy Priest. I'm like, as a charity case, I will do a key with you, but I don't really feel so inclined. But if you're telling me that you're a Windwalker or a Fury Warrior, I'll be like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, it's not you, it is you. Yeah, like, Just to recap that one real quick, because some people are asking, it's literally just it's a raid spec. This does everything you do but better in every way, in literally every way. Like double the damage if Void Weaver, double the healing if Oracle, double, triple, quadruple the shit. It does everything you do except better. So it's hard to be a holy priest. Can you play it? Absolutely, but there's really no need. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay. Next, I want to rank the one-offs. So this is another sleeper spec that I think is actually very good this season. It did get nerfed a little bit today in the patch notes, which was necessary because before this, I would have put this incredibly high. Dev Evoker, sleeper pick. Very, very strong. It goes right next to the Warlock. It goes right next here, okay? It goes right next to this. These two specs are effectively the same. They're very, 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 very similar, okay? They're very similar, and let me explain why. In high keys, you will call both of these pad, but in lower keys, both of these will do possibly top overall. There's a world where a good Dev Evoker at equal gear to something that actually is up here will out DPS them. This might just be the top over. It's one of the top overalls. Now, granted, Essence Bomb being nerfed by 30% today might bring them down a tad. But they got the 20% Firestorm, 20% Pyre, 3% overall buff on top of some other bug fixes earlier. They're doing like massive damage. And they also have some potential, interestingly enough, to save your team. Zephyr, Rescue. Remember, you guys realize that ever since they changed this not to buffs, tanks, and healers, you realize that this has literally everything that Aug has, right? People forget that all the time. You still have Source of Magic for your healer. That's 3% damage done and healing done to your healer, okay? You still have Zephyr. You still have Rescue. They're not less powerful because you're playing Dev. These are really fundamentally powerful tools. Just remember, if you're playing Dev, use them. Don't play Dev so simple. Like, make sure you use those buttons. They're very good. Poison Dispel plus Cauterizing Flame, excellent. There are some moments where Cauterizing Flame can really save your team. The remove the bleeds from Halls of Atonement, so you don't have to worry about that. But Dawnbreaker still has bleeds. Arakara, great specialization for this key. It is pad damage if you're playing the Flame Shaper, but also Life Cinders, huge value. If you put Life Cinders on your tank, you really help them live. The Renewing Blaze, the fact that you can share that. So basically you have off healing. You have a lot of stuff you can do as Dev. I actually think this spec is kind of underrated. It doesn't see a play in some very high level keys because of how it does damage and the fact that it suffers from being a Dev Evoker. But honestly, this is a great specialization to add to your 12. It doesn't have a lot of pitfalls. And I think it's very underrated. I would not put it in S with the nerfs today, but I would consider it. If it didn't get nerfed today, I would be like, bro, I think that you are significantly underrating this spec. It is very good. Just solid, like big damage, pretty consistent damage. Yes, it has 2-minute cooldowns, but like Dragon Rage is not the end-all be-all. You pretty much just have damage all the time. Firestorm is actually your cooldown, so pretty much damage every pull. If you're playing with a Dev Evoker, please don't kite out of their Firestorm consistently. They'll feel really sad. Don't do that, right? Don't do that, please. Just try to stay in there, okay? But yeah, basically Dev Sleeper OP. I think that the buffs to this is actually very solid. This is a good specialization, not to be underestimated. I would be happy to play with one. It might not be meta, but it's genuinely good. And also this spec, like these specs right here that are kind of pad, like Ret Pally, the Dev Evoker, the Destro Warlock, these shine in a plus 12. Early on in the season, I think that this is a fantastic specialization to take. The success of your key goes up by inviting this, not down. It actually goes up. Like, this is a good specialization to just take them. So Dev Evoker earns its rankings an A+. I think it's a solid DPS. Okay, great. Moving on. What do we want to do next? I think we rank the Shamans, because we are obviously going to save some of the really, really good ones for last. So we're going kind of bottom up, give or take. Elemental Shaman. Massive single target buffs. Like, I don't know if I've seen a DPS get buffed this much in a very long time. There were some massive single target buffs. But I still weirdly think... Oh, this is crazy, actually. Okay, listen. I'm debating on putting this in the highest of comp dependent, except for the fact that it's a shaman buff, and shaman buff universally applies. So, A, I don't think it's A plus. I don't think it's A plus. I'll explain why. But I don't think it's A plus. I think it's A. I would put it in A. Like, I would honestly, it's crazy because this is a shaman. Listen. I know. But there's some fundamental problems with shaman, and I have to explain it. The way that I've structured this list is trying to cover the basis of Mythic Plus, which is tough to do. Let me explain why. You still play 3-minute Ascendants. This is a big problem in uncoordinated groups. You are still cooldown reliant. This is a big problem in uncoordinated groups. Yes, you have good damage, and now your single target is better, but it's still not the highest. And also, if you play 2-minute Ascendants, even then, you're still so cooldown dependent, all right? What happens when you walk into the first pull of Priory? You activate your cooldowns, but you're squishy and you die. Your damage is gone. You're gone. You onk immediately, you have no damage, okay? You're still proc dependent by deeply rooted elements. I think that this spec has a lot that can go wrong with it. I think that it kind of depends on the run going very well. So if you see a coordinated group, an Ellie Shami might be blasting. But I'd be willing to bet and put gold right now, okay? I'd be willing to put gold right now that if you were to invite this to the average key, the majority of the time, the spec will not shine. Like, I don't think you can bring out the true power of Elemental Shaman in an average group. Like, I don't think the way that they deal damage and the way that they're dependent on some things. Like, for example, have you ever played an Elemental Shaman? Do you know how they play? Do you know what happens when you play Ascendance? When you press that button, are you going to send a kick or a cap totem or a thunderstorm in the middle of it? Because I've played Elemental Shaman before, and I am like, for that 15-second window, I'm not pressing anything. Like, I am a pure DPS machine. I have pressed my 3-minute Ascendance. I'm there to do damage. I cannot waste a single global. But that also means I'm liable to get hit by a mechanic because I also don't want to move. I also don't want to be doing anything. The main thing that surprises me about putting this here is I just don't think it's that good for pugs. I think that you might be able to make this shine. Obviously, Bond is up here, and he plays this in a coordinated group that pulls around his Ascendants. Maybe 2-minute Ascendants with PI, maybe 3-minute Ascendants, and also will take care of the CC so he can just blast. Ellie Shami could be a meta contender. But it's pretty specific. Like, that's comp dependent, because the other problem with Ellie Shami is actually, okay, out of every single spec right now in this category, this is the squishiest by far. Like, every single one of these specs is tankier than Ellie Shami. Like, you guys realize that, yeah? This is not a tanky DPS. This is liable to die. You have Astral Shift, and then what? Stone Bulwark Totem? Kinda. You have Earth Ellie on a 5-minute cooldown? What else you got? Like, not much. You technically have Ghost Wolf DR if you want to play it, but you're not sitting in Ghost Wolf and doing no damage. Like, what do you have? This has Bear Form. This has this. This has that. This has that. This has... Everything here has more options than this. This is more tanky. That's more tanky. This is actually not that tanky. So it's liable to die without support. Basically, this combination, very good, because you can babysit them. Just like you babysat Boomy this season, you can babysit an Ellie Shami. This combination, very good, because Prop Pally can sack and off heal and make sure that this guy lives, okay? But this is kind of comp dependent now all of a sudden. Let's say that this ends up being one of the best DPS specializations. You have to play around it. You don't have that level of coordination in a pug. You can't call for an external as an Ellie Shami. You can't call for Blessing of Sack. You can't actually tell people, like, I'm going to die. Help. So I think that that's one of the big problems with Ellie Shami is that it might shine in a coordinated group at a very high level, and in which case you'll be like, oh, Wu was wrong on his tier list. I'm telling you right now, maybe, but I also don't think it is a significant meta contender. I think the buffs were decent, but I don't think it's like, you got to play this. There is a spec you have to play. It's not this, though. Like, there is a spec that is better in pretty much every way, and it's not this one. I think this is an A tier spec. It's solid, very good option if you need a Shaman. I think that in terms of Shaman DPS, I think Enhance is slightly better than Ellie. I think Enhance is over here. Enhance is not S+. I think it's solid A+. Decent specialization, Shaman. But I would take an Enhance over an Ellie Shami. Again, Ellie Shami has fundamental problems, and I don't like them in a pug. If anything goes wrong in their DPS window, they are doing nothing and providing literally no value to your team. This one at least has more consistent damage. Still proc dependent, very good PI target. This one is a little bit RNG with how much damage they can do, right? Based on procs and tier set and stuff like this. Enhancement Shaman is the premier Shaman DPS. I think that Enhancement Shaman overall is a better DPS than Elemental Shaman. You want a Shaman buff in a lot of comps. So if you're not playing Resto and you're not playing this, you're playing Enhance. Just a solid spec. Good damage. I don't think it's top overall, but it's Shaman. Sky Fury is so valuable. There are some specs that literally depend on Sky Fury. So I think Shaman buff is very good. And all the pitfalls of Ellie, overall, Enhance is less dependent on that. So Enhance is just a lot more flexible and solid. Just as solid as Ellie. That's my take on Enhance. Still kind of squishy, but overall better. Okay? The utility of Shaman is never to be underestimated. In terms of pug DPS, Shaman is like the best, man. Like you can carry it so hard, although I very rarely see Shamans actually do it. Let me tell you right now, if you're a Shaman, you should be top overall kicks. Wind Shear is the most amazing kick of all time. Plus you get a DR from it, a large DR, okay? Like, oh man, please use your utility. Cap Totem, Thunderstorm, every pack. Let me tell you a habit. This is a good habit to get into. If you're a Shaman, doesn't matter what Shaman, any Shaman, all three of them. Use Thunderstorm every pull. Fix it into your rotation. Get it into your mind that you're pressing that button every single pull, and you will be like, I think you'll feel so much better. I think you'll feel so much better, actually. Yeah? If you just get into the habit, Thunderstorm every pull. Cap Totem is like every other pull, but just use those buttons. They're really, really good. You'll find that they help, okay? They found that help a lot. So Shaman, DPS, good spot right now. Remember, this is A. This is not down here. Like, you're not a Fury Warrior. This is not me ranking it low. I'm just explaining to you what I think the pitfalls are. In most key levels, I don't think the spec will shine. Yeah? Also, I see that comment. I see you there. And once again, I will state that I don't even like takoyaki. So I don't think I have anything to do with the deep from the boys. Excuse me very much. I like my octopus far away from me, not living in my home. Great. Okay, moving on. So, sleeper picks last. Hunter. Let's go over Hunter. Okay, this spec, unfortunately, this has been a roller coaster for Hunter. Because originally when we started this cycle, this was like the best DPS. So by far. Like, it was just so good. It was doing 50% more damage than everything else. This has been nerfed, and then nerfed again, and then nerfed again, and then nerfed again, and then nerfed again today. So this is like really significantly less than it was. Still good, though. I'm going to put Beastmaster Hunter, and I'm going to openly state that I could be wrong about this. I think it's a good specialization. I think it's been nerfed enough to justify its spot down here. I could see it still being A+. It's not lower than this. It's not actually B. Like, it's not down here. I think this is like really good actually right now. Okay? Like, I think this is actually solid. If you play with one, even after all the nerfs, they still do good damage. They do really consistent damage. They never not going to do damage. It's pretty straightforward. So I think that this is fine. Main problem is that it's a Hunter. Hunter is tanky. Not that it's squishy. It just doesn't really have that group buff. Hunter's Mark doesn't count. And it doesn't really have the CC. Like, if you're talking about a Shaman versus a Beastmaster Hunter, it's incomparable. So this spec needs to be doing significantly more damage, and I don't think it is at this point, okay? I don't think it is at that point, though. Okay. That's Beastmaster. Obviously, Survival is going to be give or take in the same category of this spec actually pumps. Both of these specs pump. Like, you will see a Survival Hunter beat your Elemental Shaman and beat your Afflock. Like, you can do big damage here, but it's kind of pad. Actually, that's not true. Survival has weird amounts of funnel, to be honest, but is Survival. It's a melee spec, and you're competing with other melee specs. That's the problem, is that technically speaking, you don't have a niche. Like, you're good. Like, you're really good. Like, you're good enough to be considered here, but the problem is you don't have a niche. Like, you're just good. This guy is great. This guy is great. This guy is great. This guy has a niche. You bring him because he'll destroy the prio target. You won't. So you're competing at this point without a group buff against something that brings more value. That's the problem with Hunter. Individually, if group buffs didn't exist, you could put this like way higher. Like honestly, it does a lot of damage if you're played very well. But you still won't see a lot of people playing it, so that's why I think it's here. Marksman Hunter. This spec was in meta contention. It was an S+ spec that was in contention. The nerfs today, so we got nerfed last week, was fine. That nerf last week just to Sentinel and to Dark Ranger, it was fine. The nerfs today, rough, man. The nerfs today were heavy. It's heavy. I think that it's still a solid spec, but I think that all 3 specs of Hunter are just firmly an A at this point. I think that this is just firmly an A. That's what I think at this point. Yeah. I think that I could be wrong. Like, again, the damage from this might be here, but the question is, if I told you that you could play a Marksman Hunter versus something that brings more value, I think it could be A+. Like, okay, so my only thinking is, would you play Marksman or this first? I don't know. I haven't seen this post-nerf. It got hit hard today. Trick shot's value got reduced. No, but today the trick shot's value, did you see the changes today? Trick shots got reduced. Baseline. Look it up. It's impactful, man. That's an impactful change. Trick shots was literally reduced today. That not the tier set. This was a fundamental part of Marksman. That's a big hit. I haven't seen it post-nerf, but I wouldn't be surprised if post-nerf is a different world for Marksman Hunter. Before today, this was like one of the top overall damage specs, S+, like really. But the nerfs today were massive. I just don't know. My main question is, did it get nerfed to here or here? It's not down here. It's solid. Like, you can play it and you won't regret playing it. But it got heavy-handed hit. You know, this wasn't some little light tap like this. Like, this was a firm backhand with rings on it. This was a backhand that you will feel the next day. Like, this was, I need to see it. So I could hear the argument for the A+. I could also hear the argument for bringing it down to A. Because the main thing that this has going for it, okay, I'll accept it. I'll put it here. To be honest, I'm fair enough, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was like, you really would take a Marksman? Like a month into the season, you're like, you would take a Marksman? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought that. So I'll put it here at the bottom of A+. I need to see exactly how much because the math in my head says that's a lot, but I'm just curious about how much it actually got hit. The main thing I will say about all Hunter specializations, all 3 of these need to have one caveat. You should probably take them to your plus 12. These specs are pretty hard to mess up. Not impossible, but it's pretty hard to mess them up. So I think that Marksman and Beastmaster are very good specializations for your plus 12. Like, plus 10 week 1, Hunter's a very solid choice. Because Enhancement is hard to play. Like, if you take an Enhancement Shaman because you're like, well, the tier list said that Enhancement Shaman is better than this. The average Marksman Hunter will completely gap the average Enhanced, though, okay? So if in that context, Marksman could be better or worse, depending on the key level. I think as key levels get higher, Marksman value falls off. But as key levels are lower and mid as we're getting started in the season, I think that Marksman value is actually much higher. And that's the caveat for Marksman Hunter, that it should be considered a very good specialization for this. I think at the end, I'm going to run through it again. When we finish ranking all these specs, I kind of want people to understand that yes, tier lists exist, and they exist for a reason. Because, like, you will have an easier time timing your key, almost certainly, by bringing a Resto Shaman versus a Holy Priest. Or you will probably have an easier time playing one of these specializations compared to one of these. However, there are caveats to that. Like, I would gladly take a Ret Pally over a spec that I'm going to put an S+ tier later. So we're going to go over that at the end, okay? But that's what I think about Hunters right now. You can't be upset. You can't be upset if you're a Hunter. You're a decent spec. Like, you'll do competitive damage. Just remember that if on details meters you're doing 10 mil and you have an Enhancement Shaman doing 9.8 mil, the Enhancement Shaman is significantly better than you. That's the problem. Like, I'm telling you that you'll probably beat your Shaman, but not by enough to consider you being higher than them, because they are a Shaman who provide way more to your group. You are a Hunter who kind of provides not much to your group. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's my thoughts about Hunter. I'll leave it at the bottom of A+ for now. Okay. And I'll look at the positions of A+, because I think some of this should get moved a little bit if we're actually ranking them like this. Great, let's keep going. Next, I want to talk about mages. Mages. Everybody was high up on the Fire Mage. I'm not sure if you've noticed. It got nerfed, and then it got nerfed again, and then it got nerfed again. And I was actually one of the only people who was not high on Fire Mage, because I think that it is a specialization that shines really only in the highest level of keys. I think that this specialization does not work very well in +10s and +12s. I actually think I put this all the way down here. I think the nerfs are significant. I think that you are a mage, and I think that your single target is decent. But I think that this is so weirdly comp dependent and actually kind of dependent on so many factors that I couldn't rank it higher than this. I don't even think it's bottom of A. I actually think that I would take both mage specializations over this one. If I'm doing a +10 or a +12, I'm gladly taking both of these. I would take a Frost over a Fire after the nerfs. I also think that the caveat here is, even in the highest level of keys, you still wouldn't play Fire, and it might be considered A. If you put it in Hopeful's hands, it'll be considered A+. But I actually think it's just a solid B tier spec, because everything that you can do, this one does better. This is also hard to play. If this spec is really good, and even if this spec was meta, you will see, and there's another spec, there's actually 2 specs like this that I'm going to caveat. This one here, oh, it's so bad in 10s. Have you ever seen a Fire Mage that does less damage than a tank? Because I have. This is one of those specs that just, like, sometimes you see them and you're like, bro, I thought you were good. Like, I thought Fire Mage was good right now. Like, what's happening? And you're like, oh, you're learning. That's fair. Everybody deserves a chance to learn. But this is such a punishing spec if you're trying to learn it. Like, if you're not really good at Fire Mage, it's very punishing and your damage kind of sucks. Like, it's just not that good. It's just not, like, it's really tough to play this spec pitch perfect. There's so many little interactions. There's so many things to understand. So it's like, and I'm just saying that there's the problem of the fact that if things die too fast, you can't even use the Ignite build properly. There's the problem of many things. You press the Combust, you don't even get the Combust, etc., etc. But my point is, Fire is just one of those specs where when people talk about it, if it exists as A+ at the highest level, its weirdly skill ceiling is so high that the average Fire Mage is like control your key. Like, I will put money on the fact that your Fury Warrior out DPSs your Fire Mage almost every time. I really think that. I don't even think it's comp dependent. I think it's actually, keep in mind, if I'm ranking something in B, there's a world where this should be above. I should have done that earlier. You know what? It should be like this. I know it's kind of weird, but this should be here. Like, this should be the final tier list. Like, these are all conversation pieces. These are, I don't see why you would play them. You would have to convince me that you're really, 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 really good at Blood DK or Holy Paladin for me to consider you over any other spec. So it should be, by the way, the tier list in the final rankings. It kind of makes, because this is C for comp dependent and that's B. And that makes me feel really bad because it messes with my OCD to a point that is frustrating. But I will say that it's not this. It's actually here. Like, this is a much better way to look at this because these specs all can be played, and I should do this here. I should actually leave this like this. This is a much better way to do this, okay? I actually think it should be like this, right? It should be something like this, and I should have thought about that earlier, but basically, like, I just feel bad about Blood DK being down here because I'm saying you can play Blood DK. Like, I think, you know, people will complain, but let's just leave it like this for now. Okay, so I've already gone over this. Fire Mage is there. Frost Mage is here. Frost Mage is bottom of A. Its damage is a little bit lower. Yeah, P for generally bad, kind of. It's okay, basically. It's O for okay. All right, listen. Frost Mage is actually kind of decent. The main benefit of Frost Mage is actually the fact that it slows things. Now, this is technically a problem for some knockups, but mostly your tank backpedals a lot this season. There's actually a ton of mobs in Ecodome where your tank should be backpedaling it because you don't have to take Gloom Bites. There are mobs like that in a lot of these dungeons. Frost Mage really helps with that. Frost Mage, the fact that everything is slowed tends to be really, really nice, actually. Keeps things in AoE a lot more. The fact that it just straight up is good and does decent damage. Its damage is a little bit lower. However, and its damage is also kind of patty on AoE, but doesn't matter. It's a mage. Mages are really, like, you would have to be doing less damage than everyone else for me to rank you low as a mage. Fire Mage is like that. Frost is not. Frost is solid, okay? Frost is, like, genuinely really good. Frost is good. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing great with it. It's just A. It's not B. It's A. It's solid. I would take a Frost Mage if I wanted a mage. It's all good. But I would say that if you're queuing as a Frost Mage to my key, I would be confused as to why you are not playing Arcane. Because Arcane is the first specialization that I will put in S+. It's the best DPS in the game, arguably. Its overall is higher than it used to be. This one got nerfed. This one didn't. This one got nerfed. This one didn't. This one got nerfed again. This got a tap. This tap that they did was 3% to one of the effects that isn't even overall, and then they buffed it. Never forget that in the middle of the patch notes that came out, the developer note said, mages are performing below average. I will never forget this. I will literally never forget reading those patch notes and just seeing mages are performing lower than average. This was before the Fire Mage got nerfed. This is when both specializations of Fire and Arcane were like top tier and Frost was here. And I'm just like, oh my God, why, how are they, what, do they play the game? I had that moment where I lost faith for a second and I was like, let it go. Just let them go. Just let it for a season. Just let them go. Yes, they're talking about raid, but I do keys. I know they're talking about raid, but I do keys. They didn't say for raid. They tune for raid. I know they didn't say for keys. They tune for raid. I get it. But this spec is so dominant in keys, and it still is. In fact, its overall is higher. At least before this season, it was like, well, its overall is a little lower, but its prio damage and single target's so good. No, this next season it's even better. This spec got buffed. Like, not nerfed. Like, this is actually in better specialization next season. Every time you want a mage, you'll play Arcane. Arcane is so good next season that it just, why? Give it a season off. Give it a season off. Yeah, okay, so basically just accept the fact that you will see Arcane in almost every comp that wants a mage. This is interesting because not every comp will want a mage, but basically I think this is the first DPS that belongs in S+. Easily, there's no doubt about it. This spec belongs here. It's very, very good. It is what it is. It's just super, super solid, right? That's the thing about this that you need to understand. There is another spec that belongs up here, actually, okay? But let's go ahead and continue. There's nothing else to say about this. The only caveat is that once again, mages suffer with the problem that they are complicated. If you've never played Arcane Mage before, you might not know that you need a weak aura to tell you when to use your main damaging ability. Because as far as I know, there are 12 conditional rules for when to send Arcane Barrage. And it's literally too much brain power for the average person, so they just use a weak aura to tell them now. That's how to min-max the damage on this spec. Any spec that is that nuanced and that complicated is going to be bad in a +10, often. My rule this season, and it's one of the reasons why I almost never lose a pug key. Like, granted, I tank. I oftentimes tank. So, for example, the last few weeks, my experience has been that I'm bringing up my alts. I decided what alts I want to play, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to prepare them for Season 3 in my off time on retail. I'm no longer pushing IO, so I'm just gearing my alts. And I'm gearing my alts from a very low level. I was like, great, I'm going to get my Demon Hunter up. Didn't play him, so he is 600 item level. He's 600 item level. And I'm just like, cool, let me bring him up. That means I have seen things. I have been playing my Demon Hunter. At first, I was just like, let me get to plus 10s. So I did that. Let me get to plus 12. So I did that. And I geared him pretty fast because I'm a good tank. I was able to just take him. He's already at 15s, okay, my Demon Hunter. But I've been pugging, and I've been playing in these key levels. And I'm just like, what am I looking at right now? And one of the things of my rules is why I will succeed. And I have a few things. One, when I list my plus 15 Cinder Brew, I'm an under-geared tank. I was like 660 when I did this a few days ago. When I list my plus 15 Cinder Brew this current season, I will not take a Boomy. I will also not take an Arcane Mage. And you're like, wait, those are like the two best specializations. Correct. But at this point, I will not take them to my plus 15. Because I will almost guarantee you that they're going to do subpar. I will gladly take a Death Knight or a Ret Pally over that. I think I intentionally took, what did I take? I remember I was in queue and I literally took a Fury Warrior over a Boomy. And then we timed the Cinder Brew easily. The Fury Warrior was less overall DPS, but didn't die. And I was like, great. I don't trust. Sometimes the best specializations at the highest level are just very hard to play. The problem with Arcane Mage is that both Arcane Mages at lower levels don't tend to press their defensives, and actually Mage is super squishy, they're cloth, and they don't have a lot of passive defensives. If they don't press their defensives actively, they're dead. As well as the fact that their damaging rotation is kind of complicated. So if you send buttons in the wrong order, you will do significantly less damage than any other specialization. This is one of the issues with mages. The skill ceiling is up here and the skill floor is all the way down here. Whereas Ret is just right in the middle. It's always good. Can't go wrong with Ret. Ret's going to be fine. And I believe that Warrior kind of is here as well. So basically, I took a Ret Pally. I think I took a Pally, a Warrior, a Shaman Healer for Lust, and a DK to that key. And we owned it. And we were like, great, what's next? 16. I just kept going. But that's like the mindset that I have. This is still an S+ spec. But I really want you to understand that even this current season, when these are both S+ specs, like this is the meta comp, yeah? When this is still the best, this current season, when I am pugging, I don't take them. Does that make sense? Like, this is my mentality of like, there's a lot of bad Arcane Mages. This is nothing against the spec. It's still S+. But I still think that you gotta understand that just because this thing exists up here, people who make tier lists, like, I don't know, if somebody were to watch this and they're like, what is he talking about? Arcane Mage is the best specialization in the game. It's like, I implore you to go pug on a random alt of yours, some plus 12s, and invite Arcane Mages. You're going to be like, why are they doing 3 million less DPS? Like, they're just, you'll see what I'm talking about, okay? So I have to clarify that this exists in that state, right? Like, I have to clarify that this exists for that state, that there are some specs that are just better at that than others. Arcane Mage, though, is the first S+ DPS. It's by far. I think this deserves its place here. The nerfs today were hilarious. It's still here. Okay, great. Moving on. Shadow Priest is a super interesting one. Shadow Priest is a really interesting one. I think that this is weirdly comp dependent, but I see you playing it a lot. Like, I think that Shadow Priest is one of those, in a really coordinated group, this is the S+ contender. Like, you know, Arcane Mage, Shadow Priest, VDH, Resto Druid, you're seeing one of the bases for the best comps in all of Mythic Plus. But this spec is not that good in pugs. It has fundamental problems in pugs. The double Shadow Crash, chef's kiss. So it at least doesn't struggle with its dot uptime like it used to. But the problem is that Void Form exists, and the other problem is that this is hard to play. Because if I put this in S+, you will come back and yell at me about a month from now. A month from now, you're going to be like, Awu said that Shadow Priest was an S+ spec, but all these Shadow Priests I keep seeing kind of suck. And I'm going to be like, I told you. All right. So they were playing, I saw most people playing Dark Ascension, but I don't think Dark Ascension is the play at the highest key levels anymore. I do think that people are trying to chain and actually get the most out of their Void Form with Archon. As far as I know, and I'm not a Shadow Priest player myself, but this is my best guess, okay? Even with Dark Ascension being the possibly premier option, Sir Albion, you're right. Even with Dark Ascension being the premier option, you will see Shadow Priest do 2 million overall less than other DPS specializations. I can't in good conscience really rank this an S+. I have to put it in A+, okay? Your utility kind of sucks. Your kick kind of sucks. Vampiric Embrace is the only thing that you have going for you. Mass Dispel being kind of niche in a few scenarios is quite good, okay? Like, with respect, you actually, Mass Dispel can be very good this season with some of the things, all right? The utility otherwise, you compare it. You're like, oh, what are you talking about, okay? Nah, listen. Don't come at me with its utility is that good. I want you to compare this and this. PI is not considered utility. PI is considered part of your spec. That's just part of your spec. Like, you're obviously you have PI, okay? Mind Soothe is not utility. You don't come at me with Mind Soothe being utility. When is Mind Soothe utility? When you the one instance that you want to Mind Soothe that one corner so you can walk past it easier, Mind Soothe has like 1 or 2 niche uses. Barely utility, okay? Barely. Mind Soothe barely counts as utility, okay? If it allows you to skip something, in this current season, if you go right and get, there's like 1 or 2 things I can think of that you might want to Mind Soothe, and you can just walk without Mind Soothe anyways. In most of these, there's one thing in Floodgate I'm thinking. There's like, you know, some very niche use, but really, you could also just have any other option, or you could probably just use any other combination of abilities to skip things. I give you, so everybody comes up, oh, Shadow Priest utility so high. Excuse me. Compare that to, I'll throw something. I was going to say Ellie Shami. That's an easy one. This is way more. No. I'll compare it to Dev Evoker. Come here. I'm going to put these down here for a second. I want you to rank the utility of these 2 things together. Let me tell you. Right now, you're like, psh, oh, woo. Dev Evoker? Yeah. Zephyr, Rescue, Cauterizing Flame. Life Cinders with Renewing Blaze. That can save your tank. An actual range kick. Knock up, knock back. Vampiric Embrace, Mass Dispel. A group buff that actually matters a bit more. And of course, PI just factors into your own damage. Psychic Scream being equivalent to a Tail Swipe. I'm not saying it doesn't have utility. I'm just saying that it's not really, like, it's not, you don't bring Shadow Priest because of its utility. You babysit a Shadow Priest because of its utility. Like, you actually have to babysit this spec. If you want to play Shadow Priest, you have to babysit this. Did I have Devin? I think I put Devin A+, actually, didn't I? Did I play Dev? Wait a second. It was either high A or A+. I thought I put it next to, I put it next here. This is what's here. Exactly. I thought it was similar to Destro. Yeah, okay. Devil's behind Destro, correct, because these 2 are kind of similar right now in terms of the fact that they don't bring, they're very good overall damage. Solid, okay? I strongly encourage you to think this will into your key based on utility, and this will literally, like, this is not utility. I see what you're saying, and I get what you're trying to say, but when you played when Shadow Priest did 30% more damage than everybody else at the end of Dragonflight, when you played a comp that had to baby them. You played an Aug Evoker who would literally rescue your Shadow Priest so they didn't have to walk. Do you remember that? That was good times. You would play an Aug Evoker who would rescue the Shadow Priest so they didn't have to actually walk to the pack and they could do more damage. There was times where your Shadow Priest wouldn't even spec kick because they wanted the other talent. So you were playing without an interrupt. They would send Vampiric Embrace when everybody was at full health anyways, all right? So Shadow Priest, the fact is you only bring Shadow Priest is if its damage is incredibly high. This is a numbers game. It's not like man, this does a little bit less damage than another thing. I'm going to bring it anyways because it's really, really good, okay? So it's basically like this has to do very, very good damage because you are literally babying it. It is, I wouldn't call it not tanky. You know, Desperate Pair is an actual cooldown, and then otherwise Flash DR and Fade being a perma 20% plus a little bit of a shield if you play that talent. I wouldn't say that it's bad. I mean, it's definitely not bad. So it's A+. And what I will say here, though, is you got to play around it if you're playing it. That is not true for something like Dev Evoker, which just slots in at any point. You can literally just slot in a Dev Evoker and be like, boom, and do big damn. This one requires a bit more play around, and therefore, in the highest of keys, I really think that a very, very meta comp that you will see times some world first keys. By the way, world first keys is this will be look like it's S+. But I also guarantee you that if you think Shadow Priest is S+, and you're just like, I need to take a Shadow Priest to every one of my keys, you will often end your key with the Shadow Priest being the lowest DPS. Now, that won't happen at this level of keys, but it will happen in your keys. I guarantee it. I guarantee you that you will take a Dev Evoker and a Shadow Priest, and this guy will fucking slam your S Priest. Like, there's going to be a lot of S Priests. Why? Because S Priest is not easy to play. Because although it's actually tuned to be very good, the difference between a very good S Priest and a mid S Priest is massive. And the difference between a very good Dev Evoker and a mid Dev Evoker is not as massive. The skill ceiling versus the skill floor. This is what you got to understand. This is the same thing we went over with mages. Because if I tell you, for example, that Arcane Mage is an S+ spec, but you, depending on the key level you do, maybe you're a title, maybe you've got title, you've got your 20s done, you're all the way over here, okay? But you're leveling an alt right now, and you're going to do plus 15s. The amount of Arcane Mages that you will see that do, like, subpar damage is just like, what? So weird, okay? Like, so weird. It's the skill ceiling is here, the skill floor is here. Compare this to a specialization like Retribution Paladin. Skill ceiling, skill floor. It's very hard to play Ret Pally very wrong. If you hit the buttons as a Ret Pally in the wrong order, you will still do damage. But if you hit your Shadow Priest buttons in the wrong order, you will do much less damage. Obviously, every spec played poorly will do not as good. But I think that people significantly underestimate how bad some players are in a plus 10. And I say that with the most respect in my heart. They're absolutely allowed to play the game, and you are absolutely not allowed to flame them at that key level. But I think that a lot of people underestimate how absolutely terrible and how much that people at that level should be using the one-button rotation and are not using the one-button rotation. Okay? I think that there's some people defending Shadow Priest right now. I know enough about Shadow Priest to have this conversation. But I would love to explain to you the fact that most Shadow Priests don't understand that Flash Heal is a DR. I would love to explain to you the fact that the amount of Shadow Priests whose dot uptime is somehow 40% in a key. You're like, 40%? That's impossible. It's impossible. You just dot. And you're like, yes, you just dot. But your mastery is tied to that. And if you don't actually keep up your dots, you do very little damage. You know what I mean? Oh, sorry, they're right here. No, we gotta finish the last three. Last three specs are here. But so I'm telling you that this spec, I'm giving you the warning right now that this, in your key, the first week of the season, you're going to be disappointed by this spec. I'm telling you right now that I'm not saying you can't play it. I'm just saying, right, that anything that's preemptive, anything like this is the thing. This is the thing. That's all I'm making the argument for, is that I really think you will see this clear as day. I'm willing to actually say this very, very, very strong, okay? There are going to be some Shadow Priests where you're like, what a great spec. And there's going to be most Shadow Priests you play with, as you're pugging along, going into Season 3, you're going to be like, they're kind of not very good. But I don't think they're going to be very, very, very bad. They don't go down here. They're just low A+. But I also think that this is like, you will see this as a meta contender. Like this, you will see this being the highest side of things, okay? Fair point. It's in the same category as dev, but let's go over that at the end, okay? So the skill ceiling, skill floor. This is the thing, okay? All right. Let's finish the tier list, and then I will have these conversations, because they're good conversations. By the way, I don't mind. Like, this is a good conversation to have, because you're like, but I don't understand. This spec is so good. I just have enough time playing World of Warcraft to tell you that the way that keys work at this level are just not the same as the plus. Like, I don't do the world first keys. That's not the level I play with. Like, I am not going to be competing for world first keys next season. I will get either title or just below title if I stop early because I get bored. That's where I'll be. And I'll have several characters in that range. That's my experience. But I'm also an altaholic who plays like 10 different classes every single season. I play like everything. So I guarantee you, about 2 months in, I'm going to get bored and I'm going to be like, let me pick up my Warlock. Let me just get my Warlock up. So I'm going to bring my Warlock and I'm going to go pug my way through plus 10s because my friends are not going to be there. Like, I'll have made friends in the season, but they're all going to be doing their push keys, and I'm just going to be like, I'll take a week off push keys, and I'll just be like, Havoc's here. I'll raid in a second. So, you know, I'll just take a break. I'll just take a week off because I don't really care enough about my IO to have to be competitive. I'll just be like, nah, this week I want to go play my other tank. I want to play my Blood DK for whatever reason because I'm bored, okay? So I'm going to bring my Blood DK, and I'm going to go pug my way through plus 10s 3 months into the season. Do you know how hard that is? Right now, by the way, right now, if you go try to do plus 10s, you know how hard they are? They shouldn't be. We're over-geared. We have literally like 30 more item levels than we had when we were originally doing them. But the quality of players who are at that level is quite low. That's okay, because every person who plays World of Warcraft should be able to enjoy the game. But it's a different world. It's a different world. When I decide to take that week off and I will go do some lower keys, I'm telling you that we could fail them. And you're like, there's no way you fail. I'm like, there is a way you fail them. And it depends a lot on what specs I bring. It also obviously depends on player skill. You could bring the best specs for that and still fail. But there's a knowledge gap and a rotational gap where I will just be like, bro, I'll be healing. I'll bring an alt healer and my prot warrior will just die. And I'll be like, that's so weird. It's a plus 10 and he died to melees. How did that happen? I assume he turned around. I know Prot Warrior. I play Prot Warrior. And then I go into details and I just look at it. And I'm like, oh, he didn't hit shield block. And I'm like, that's literally how you play Prot Warrior. It's the fucking icon of your spec. You are literally a shield. It's the one button you have to press and basically keep up. You have a shield. Why would you have a shield if you don't press the shield button? But there are players who get to plus 10s or plus 12s, and I'm just trying to fill my vault, and they don't press the shield button. So if that happens at that level, imagine a Shadow Priest. What I'm saying is that the skill floor of Shadow Priest, when you play Shadow Priest like that, you are doing literally no damage. And when you play a Dev Evoker like that, you still do damage. There are some specs that are more friendly to being played bad. This is not one of them. That is the whole argument for Shadow Priest, as well as for Arcane Mage, as well as for a few other specs. Does that make sense? I think that I've covered that ground enough that we can move on to the last few things here, okay? Yeah, exactly. Everybody's telling, so right, exactly. So thank you. Everybody's confirming for me. They're like, yeah, I heal, by the way. I tried to heal a warrior. He had 10% uptime. I'm like, that shouldn't happen because there's only one button to press, but it does happen, okay? Totally happens. And you're like, I tried to heal, what was the other one? Yeah, a Prot Pally, and you're like, man, they're dying a lot. And I'm like, oh, they didn't press Consecrate. Like, that's pretty significant. Oh, they didn't press my Shield of the Righteous. And I'm just saying, like, okay, all right. Okay, let's move on. Let's finish a tier list, and then we can have all these conversations, because there's all these nuances. World of Warcraft's a complicated game, man. All right, let's keep going. Frost DK. Frost DK. I'm going to rank Unholy first. I'm going to leave these two for last. Unholy DK, okay? Unholy DK is going to be an A+. This was higher than this. But the nerfs today, I do not know how significant they were. Frost DK and Unholy both got slapped today. I don't know if this is here or here. I don't think it's here. I don't know. This is a question mark for me because most DKs that you see are Frost, and I know the numbers for Frost. I don't know the numbers for Unholy. I know the Sand Lane got hit hard. I don't know how much that affects Unholy because every time I played my DK, I was Blood, and I played Deathbringer instead of Sand Lane. That being said, I know Sand Lane got hit hard. I know their actual base things, a few of the things got hit hard. I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming they're not lower than A+. Could be wrong. If their damage is significantly lower, I could see them being an A. That would shock me, though. Like, they got a fair nerf today, but I don't think it's the most extreme thing. They were just sleeper because everyone was playing Frost, because previously what it looked like was Frost was, like, obviously the best melee specialization in the game. Like, Frost was fit into any comp. You play Frost, it's immortal, huge damage, good damage all the time with the rework and all the stuff. So Frost was here. Frost received about, I think it was an 8% nerf to single target and a 5% to, like, those are fair numbers. It still is one of the best melee specializations in the game. Unholy deserves its spot here. Frost is either the highest of A+ for DPS or S+. I do not know post-nerf because the nerfs were not live today. What I can tell you is that before the nerfs, in every single PTR key that I have done, Frost DK is clapping everyone. In every PTR key that I have done, Frost DK is just slamming. Okay? I think it's still probably S+. I don't think it got hit hard enough to be lower than that. The issue with Frost DK is you don't necessarily play it in every single comp, which is super strange, but kind of true. Yeah? Super strange, but kind of true. Hold up. That should be pinned if anybody, if you're there, Soap. Can you make a note about pinning this, by the way? So, I think that it's the deep... You might not bring it because it's the highest potential DPS specialization. I think that you would... Thanks, Drabs. I think that you would play it because it just fits into the comp. Because if you're playing a caster comp, I wonder if you actually play this all the time. All right? Let's get into the actual conversation. This I still think is S+, though. Main thing is that this... right here, the best melee... Hear me out. The best melee specialization for your weekly keys. This is good at a low level. It's good at a high level. This is an amazing specialization. This spec right here is probably the best melee you could possibly bring. Passively tanky and actively tanky. I really think that Frost DK ends up being like, for example, if you're the type of player who's like, look, I capped out at 2k IO this season. I know other people will listen to this and be like, wait, 2k IO, that's like nothing. Yes, I know, but there are people who are really happy to hit 2k. Good for you. Congratulations, okay? You're saying I want to get to 3k this season. So that, by the way, to clarify for other people, is going from +8s to +13s. Yeah? That's the level that is, okay? No, I know. And there are people who are very passionate about the game, but they're like, look, I do want to level up. I know I haven't really quite gotten to 10s, but I really want to get to even 12s this season. I am telling you that if you want the best chance of success, hear me out. What you should do is if you're a tank or a healer, you should invite 3 Frost DKs. I'm not kidding. You will have the highest success rate of your keys, I think, if you play 3 Frost DKs. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. I think you should play 3 Frost DKs and you will win. That is probably the way to guarantee the success. It's like you will have like an 80% success rate if you literally just take 3 Frosty Ks. You play the tank that you're playing, you bring a Resto Shaman for Lust, and you play 3 Frosty Ks. And you're going to be like, wow, my keys are so much easier, because right now in a +10, you're still thinking like, oh, I'm going to take like one of these, one of those, you're like a little candy shop. It's like, dude, just play 3 Frosty Ks, and you'll probably win the key. Like, I'm just saying, it's kind of degenerate, it's not as fun, but trust me, you're going to take this tip. If you're the player I just talked about, try it, and you're going to be like, you're going to laugh hysterically. You're going to be like, wow, I can't believe I didn't know this beforehand. Thank you, Awu, for this wonderful tip. Like you say, you're going to be like, what? But you don't have to play Breath at this point, Kokart. Like, I think that the rework to Frosty K made it a lot more friendly for baseline power. I actually think that the rework to Frosty K made it more friendly to low keys. You know what I mean? Like, granted, the average Frosty K at that level is also not going to hit AMS correctly or even IBF, and they're probably not even going to hit. They don't even know they have AMZ, and they might not even know how to Death Strike back up the damage. But the class is so baseline solid that, like, Ret Pally is a little bit less baseline solid, but I just think it's something that I would do. I'm telling you right now that if I ever wanted to just not worry about my key, I would consider taking 3. Like, you take 2 Frosty Ks and a Warrior, or 2 Frosty. You could take 2. I'm just saying, I really think you could take this advice, because you're like, well, I could play like a Rogue or a this or a that. You're like taking complicated, like, I swear, if you're trying to get 10s done, this is later in the season, not first week. First week might be a little bit harder, but when damage doesn't really matter and the only thing that matters is surviving, if you just take the tankiest class, like, you'll probably win, right? You got three melee kicks, you got technically the grips and the whatnot and stuff like this, okay? That leaves 1 specialization. Here's the cook, all right? Here's the cook. Are you ready? This is also S+. I know. Hear me out, okay? I gotta explain. If anything, in the higher level of keys, it actually goes like this. In the higher level of keys, this is probably better than Frosty K. This fits into comps right now. This will be played. I promise you that you will see this in push keys. All right? The only issue with Havoc is the fact that VDH exists. The only issue with Havoc is the fact that VDH exists, okay? A high-level Havoc is not squishy. A high-level Havoc is not squishy, okay? You will not play a Havoc and a VDH. You won't. You will not play both. You will not play both. In other words, VDH only is played, Havoc is only played if VDH is not the tank you're playing, okay? You will not. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Comp-wise, it doesn't work, okay? It does not work. But you don't necessarily play VDH in every single comp right now. These tanks, when I went over the tank rankings, this is above. It is the thing that deserves this category. But remember, all 3 of these tanks are equally as valuable, just slightly blessed. Zol, so fast. Thanks, Zol. Basically, this spec is the melee Arcane Mage. This is the equivalent of Arcane Mage for melee. All right? This is what this is. This is Havoc. Havoc is incredible damage. The only issue, I think, is that you don't see a lot of them. I don't know. These used to be a lot more popular. You just don't see a lot of them. But my sneaking suspicion is if they don't nerf it, what's going to happen, okay? What's going to happen here with Havoc is that people are going to play it at the highest level and it will trickle down. So right now, there's the people who know Havoc is actually that good, right? The people who know Havoc is like a really giga S tier spec are going to start playing it. You're going to watch the season. Some of the higher keys will be timed with a Havoc, and then other people will start picking up Havoc. And they'll be like, oh, interesting, you should play Havoc here? Great. And they'll start playing Havoc. Those people are going to have a hard time because Havoc is like a little bit of a skill cap spec, skill ceiling. But it's not like the most complicated. I'm not good at Havoc because it's way too zip-zappy for me. My brain is too old, and I do not have the reaction time to play Havoc properly. I always die to ground effects. Havocs and Pugs tend to grind, to Havoc. I think that Havocs and Pugs are going to be a possible menace to society because they die to ground effects all the time because they're darting around and all that stuff. But I swear you will see this a lot. I think that you will actually have a very interesting season, and you will see Havoc being played. This is my prediction. All right. So this is my prediction. Now, give or take, this is my tier list. I'm fairly confident in everything. The things that I have explained, obviously this. How long was this? Wait. How long? Wait a second. Didn't I say this wasn't going to be very long? Okay. Well. I have a lot to say. All right. Now, here's what I want to say before the video actually ends. Everything has a method to play. The only problem, okay, the main issue with specs that are down here, these three I think are hard to play because this is a pure DPS and you could play this or this, okay? This, I don't see why you would bring it. Like, there's really almost no category except Arcar where you, like, I really want a Holy Pally. It's like, okay? This also, every other tank has something here. Every other spec aside from these four right now have a niche pick, okay? Every single one of these is niche. Aside from this four, you will see Fury at the highest level keys. You will see some Fury players play Arms for the higher level keys. You will see DPS Warrior, I promise you, okay? You're going to see this. Yes, it's in comp dependent, but because you will play this, I promise you will see it. It is worth playing. You will see some Mistweavers, but I bet you not too many. I don't think you'll see many Windwalkers. I think Windwalker is a little bit behind, but you will still see some. Like, you're going to see occasionally the comp with the Windwalker. I think this is more niche. You might even see some people playing Aug or Balance, but I don't think it'll be that popular. Subtlety is a sleeper thing. I guess, like, Shindig or somebody might play Subtlety, but I don't see why they would play it over Assassination, personally speaking. And then as the tier list goes up, you're like, okay, you got Frost Mage, was kind of niche. Some people love Survival. You can make it work. Decent specialization. Beastmaster, you can make it work. Elemental Shaman, sleeper kind of pick. Again, could be a meta contender if you're willing to play around it, make it work. Maybe feed it PI for 2-minute Ascendance, etc., etc. Could be really good. Feral Druid, actually, I think this spec could either be A+, depending. You might want Mark of the Wild. If you don't play Resto Druid, you're not playing Guardian. Feral's a solid choice, especially if you play with a Warrior, etc., etc. So these are really close tuning-wise to the point where 5 to 10% is interesting. 5 to 10% is actually really, 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 really interesting because this is close in tuning, which means that when we go over comps, if you play a comp that buffs your spec by 10%, all of a sudden, over here. Yeah, over here. And if you play a spec, and if you're playing a Feral Druid and you're playing with a VDH and a Mage, all of a sudden that Ellie Shami looks a lot better because now that Ellie Shami gets buffed by 6% and you don't. So this tuning is kind of tight right now. Like, I've explained why I think these are all here, but I would say that the tuning going into this next season, as of right now, is so much better. There are a few offenders, and the offenders are healers. Healers are not tuned well at the moment. Healers are like a problem, okay? Yeah, HPAL is low because you're almost trolling by playing it. Like, you will notice by having an HPAL or an H Priest, I think you'll notice it. I think healers are actually the thing that's not tuned well, but honestly, everything is solid right now. There's a few specs that are lower, as always, but not that many. Like, it's not trolling to play Fury Warrior. It's not trolling to play one of these specs down here. Like, this is actually good right now. I think we're in a really good spot going into the next season, and I'm excited to play it. Remember, very realistically, I'm going to be playing Guardian. Guardian is not this. I could play this, and I'll maintain my VDH or my Warrior because I like these tanks, or my Prop Pally. I'm not a huge Brewmaster fan, so I won't play Brewmaster. I don't need to maintain all 6 tanks, but I will still play my Guardian. I know it's A and not S+. Doesn't matter to me. It's good. I can still play it. It is a few % less. It's all good. It's no problem. I just need to make sure that I find a comp that isn't a Resto Druid. That's the only way you troll. Group buffs matter. I'm trolling if there's a Resto Druid and I'm like, can I play my Guardian? No, you cannot. That's a bad idea. Then you lose a lot of value because Mark of the Wild is huge. Then you're actually kind of, you could do it, but you're losing a lot of value, right? So that's my thoughts on this. We can go ahead and make some comps right now. Like, I'm happy with comp predictions. I would love to make some comp predictions. There's a whole tier list maker for it, so we can go over there and actually do it right now. But the comp predictions, let's